Good evening. I would like to welcome you all to this evening's extraordinary council meeting and to those members of the public who are watching the live stream. In accordance with Rule 3 of the Council Procedure Rules, I received a formal request from 5 members of this council that an extraordinary meeting of full council be convened. The reasons given were to enable council to consider certain items of business that were due to be considered on 14th September. As you will recall, the agenda for that meeting had to be revised following the passing of Her Majesty Queen Elizabeth II in accordance with the council adopted protocols. Concern was expressed that, as a consequence of the planned work programme for Council in November and the fact that various items had to be deferred from September, it would not be possible to deal with all these items of business at our November meeting due to time constraints. For these very practical and, in recent memory, unprecedented reasons, I'll therefore agree to the convening of this extraordinary meeting. With regards to the choice of date for this meeting, this too was very heavily constrained by practical considerations. As a consequence of other planned meetings and religious holidays for a number of faiths during this month, there were only 2 dates where a meeting could be held, today and tomorrow. My preference was to retain the usual practice of the council meeting on a Wednesday. I understand that representations were made by members of the Conservative group expressing concerns around deadlines for questions, etc., given their religious obligations. I apologise for this, and I hope they will accept my assurance that both I and officers were doing the very best we could in all the circumstances. I am grateful to the officers for the promptness in notifying members on 29th September that this meeting was being convened and for offering additional support and assistance to enable engagement and participation for those affected by the religious holidays. To be clear, this meeting does not replace our November full council, which will take place as scheduled on the 23rd. Finally, some of our usual announcements. For those councillors who may be accessing this meeting remotely, a reminder that you are not counted as being present for the purposes of the Local Government Act 1972, and you may not vote on any item under consideration. Can I please remind all those who may be introducing reports, asking questions, responding to questions, or contributing to the debate to ensure you switch on your microphones to ensure you're heard on the live stream. Please also be succinct so that we can conclude the meeting before 10 p.m. I also want to mention that the traffic light systems are not working, so we'll be doing it manually. Thank you for your understanding. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Billington, Councillor Moema, Councillor Nicholson, Councillor Palace, Councillor Race, Councillor Ross, Councillor Sadek, Councillor Williams, and Councillor Hayeshurst. I have apologies. Pardon? Councillor Potter. And apologies from Councillor Potter. Do I have any apologies for lateness? Sorry, Councillor Samata. Okay, thank you. Are there any other councillors joining remotely? Yeah? For those councillors joining the meeting remotely, if you wish to speak or comment, please use the raise hand function and I'll invite you to speak if time permits. Please also refrain from using the chat function as it's not visible for councillors attending in person, those watching the live stream. Agenda item 2, speaker's announcement. Since the last full council, I've had the opportunity to take part in many fantastic initiatives and events. Some of them include a visit to Hoxton Market and Chatsford Road Market, leading tours for schools and community groups, a visit to the Brady Club Archive, learning Jewish East End history, joined Junior Safety Officers Programme at a primary school, hosted Hackney Older Citizens at the Town Hall, the Act of Hope and Remembrance service at St. Paul's Church, Hackney Youth Parliament resource launch here in the Chamber, Fame Star Youth Black History Month event at the Edge Youth Club Woodbury Downs, Diwali events, and the Clapton Community Feast celebrating Black History Month for the older residents of Hackney. We also had a very successful intergenerational Silver Sunday Fun Day at St. Mary's Secret Garden. Lastly, you're warmly invited to my Christmas Panto event to watch Mother Goose at Hackney Empire on the 21st of December. Please contact the Speaker's office to book your tickets. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Members are to note the guidance on declaring interest as set out in the agenda. Are there any declarations of interest relating to any item on the agenda? If so, could members please declare it now, indicating which item it relates to and the nature of the interest? Councillor Tajari.
One of my siblings is a member of the deputation. Next item.
Thank you, Councillor Tajari. Is there anyone else who would like to declare an interest? No? Thank you very much. Agenda item 4, minutes of the previous meeting. Can we agree the minutes of the meeting of the council held on 14 September 2022 as a true and accurate record of proceedings? Councillor, is this a matter of accuracy? If not,
Yes.
please.
I believe it's a matter of accuracy. Now, on page 14, I mentioned last time, I didn't want to make a big issue of it at the time. I hoped it would get resolved. It's regarding the council meeting on the 20th of July, where the minutes about that meeting says that the Conservative councillors left early. They left at the adjournment, but it did not mention anyone else leaving besides the Conservative councillors. Now, it says it's resolved because there was no one else that left at that time, something to that effect. It was only us. Now, everyone sitting here can have a look because this is being recorded and it's on YouTube. And you can see that we're not the only ones that were here before the adjournment and we're not here after the adjournment. I don't want to mention any names. I'll give you a little hint. We're not the only Jewish people, only the Conservatives, the others. And I'll tell you why we left. I want to resolve this, if you can give me this minute, because I don't want this to become a big story. We were going to pray. We had to catch the prayers in the synagogue before nightfall. And we're not the only ones. You can look at it, you can look this up. We appreciate the council gave time for prayers. That's beautiful. We had to go to synagogue. We want this administration to leave us alone, let us do our thing and respect us. We respect everyone else. And I hope this gets resolved. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. You've noticed it. Councillor Steinberger.
Yeah, sorry, just a point of accuracy. I'm actually going to ask for a freedom of information request because you've written there that you've checked it and we were the only councillors who left. That is not accurate. I want to know who's checked it, who's gone through it. This is non-stop. There's other things happening also, but I'm going to deal with this now. This is absolutely shocking, to say the least. It's clear other councils have left at the same time, and you say you've checked it. Well, maybe I'll take you to get a pair of glasses to have a proper check, because whoever's checked it, it's quite obvious that. No, it's not. Thank you. This is.
If you let me finish, I understand you're concerned. I do apologise, and I'll definitely ask the officers to check and confirm with you and councillor in writing.
Yeah, but I want to know in the first place why this came to this. What kind of checking? Is this how the council check everything?
Yeah, I understand, and the monitoring officer will be in touch. Thank you so much, Councillor Steinberger. No, any others? Okay, moving on to agenda item. Sorry, is this matter of accuracy? Can you agree? Yeah. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item 5, deputation. You see from the agenda papers that a deputation has been received on Morning Lane. Can I invite Councillor Joseph to introduce the deputation, followed by the deputation leader, Heather Mendick, who is accompanied by Adam Foreman, Margaret Trotter, and Pat Quigley. You will have a total of 5 minutes to do so. It is kindly requested that you stick to the allocated time. Thank you. Yeah. Sorry, Councillor, could you please stand up while it's addressing? Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. It's an honour to introduce this deputation from the Morning Lane People's Space Campaign Group. MOPS, as they are known, set out to find out what local people wanted to see on the big Tesco site in Morning Lane. And as many of us will know, they've been out in the community on their stall outside Tesco, come rain or shine, many weekends over the past 2 years. They've spoken to thousands of people. I think they set an inspirational example of how to really engage with the public. So much of the planning process is shrouded in mystery, and understandably, many people feel they have little influence over what gets built in their areas. We spent public money when we bought this site, and I think it is important that the public have a say over what gets built here, and that we are transparent about how decisions are reached. As MOPS have shown, people overwhelmingly want to see council housing and keep a Tesco supermarket if there is going to be any new development. Whilst councils do not receive government funding for council house building, owning the land is a good start. And there are examples of councils achieving as much as 42% social housing in developments such as the old Holloway prison site, where the Mayor of London contributed additional money to Peabody. I hope we can explore similar funding sources to ensure we get as much council housing as possible. Asking questions is an important part of the democratic process. MOPS are unpaid volunteers, and I would like to thank them for their hard work, for their efforts in identifying what people want to see, and for asking what has happened so far. Thank you.
Thank you. When Hackney Council bought the Morning Lane site, they took out a preferential options agreement with Hackney Walk, the developers responsible for the failed fashion hub. This, I start again. Well, for tall people. Okay. All right, can I start again? So when Hackney Council bought the Morning Lane site, they took out a preferential options agreement with Hackney Walk, who were the discredited developers of the failed fashion hub. And this seriously undermined the trust in the council. There was no transparency or scrutiny of this options deal. As you've heard, the pre-planning plans outlined a smaller supermarket for the site and 450 private homes. Our survey in 2020 found that local people, the biggest issues were to have a supermarket the same size and council housing. Strikingly at the time, many did not believe the council would ever deliver a development that was in the interest of Hackney residents. However, the options agreement has lapsed, and we now have an opportunity to draw up new proposals. By explaining these while carrying out a new survey, we find that more people believe that whatever consultation we as MOPS do, the council will always do what they want, and that they're likely to sell off Morning Lane site to private developers. Trust has been lost because the process lacked transparency. Trust has been lost because neither the developers nor the council carried out a consultation. MOPS, we've carried out the consultation, and we are trusted by the community. Trust has also been lost because of the involvement with Hackney Walk, and the importance of rebuilding trust cannot be overstated. So the challenge for all councillors is how the council can engage with the community in developing plans for 55 Morning Lane and ensure transparency and proper scrutiny that can start to rebuild this trust.
Adam has spoken about rebuilding trust. We also need information to ensure public scrutiny of future plans. We need information to test the financial viability of charging low rents to recover all costs of the build project. We need transparency over contracting and costings, and trust and openness in our dealings. We have worked with the planning master students at UCL, who have created financial viability studies for the site to build homes for low rent and commercial and retail space for rent. These studies show that it is possible to create a viable development with 50% or more council housing. The Mayor claims this is impossible. The public must be able to see the basis for this claim. The council has said it will accept a payback period of 30 to 40 years for the homes, which this plan delivers, charging low rents for homes. The Audit Commission has said up to 60 years payback period is still good value for councils, and well-built homes will be contributing for many more years after that. In addition to the demands in the written deputation, we want to speak with the council's quantity surveyor and housing officers to test the viability of our return on capital
You
models.
have 1 minute left. Thank you.
And data on the actual costs of the estate management and maintenance. In this way, we can engage and contribute to the project and help ensure that local residents' priorities are embedded in any plans.
Through our discussions with the community, we're acutely aware of the significance of this site to the people of Hackney. They're clear about what's wanted and what's needed in Morning Lane. For their part, the council should ensure that its actions inspire the confidence and support of the people they serve. Going forward, it's essential there's transparency, openness and accountability. For this to happen, there needs to be a recognition and acknowledgement of the breakdown of trust that's occurred between Hackney Council and residents because of the previous failed and poorly constructed options agreement. There needs to be a determined effort to build retrust, and to do this, we ask that the council make public the unredacted option agreement, any checks that were done on Hackney Walk before entering into an agreement with them, and all the pre-application exchanges between the council and Hackney Walk. Residents need to be able to engage fully with the process to scrutinise decision-making and hold the council to account. In addition, we ask that the council make public and discuss at the full council meeting the reports that inform the option agreement, including any viability studies or other reasoning that contributed to the decision to set a target of 20% so-called affordable housing on this site.
Thank you. Time is finished. The allocated time is finished. Thank you very much. Members have 5 minutes to ask questions on what has been presented. You're reminded that this is an opportunity to ask questions for clarity and not to make statements, following which I will invite Mayor Glanville to respond. Councillor Lynch.
Can I ask a question, or do you want the Mayor to respond first?
Question first, please.
Sorry?
Question first, please.
Oh,
Clarity.
okay. For those that know me, I'm Councillor Anna Lynch.
Councillor Lynch, will you please stand up?
So, of course,
Thank
sorry,
you.
Madam Speaker, sorry. So I'm one of the Homerton councillors along with Rob Nicholson, and my question is to the people that are here today. Would you not agree with us as ward councillors, and the council has always tried to do its best for residents in our ward in regard to the Morning Lane area, and continues to work to that end, including the Mayor recently meeting with you as a group to discuss the way forward? And would you not agree that the previous options agreement gives the council and the community a fresh start for the site? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Steinberger.
Yeah, I just have a quick question. I was by one of your introductions and I heard the statement that in order to build, it'll cost like 300,000 or something to build a 1-bedroom. It seems very ambitious. I don't know what they're putting in this 1-bedroom. Have you made your own inquiries to find out how much it should cost really a 1-bedroom flat?
Thank you, Councillor Steinberger. Councillor Pembroke, please.
Very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for calling me, and thanks to Morning Lane Speak Space for coming to address it today. And am I on now? Okay, thanks. Thanks very much for coming to address us today. My question is, since the agreement with Hackney Walk has expired and they're no longer involved, could you explain a little bit more why it's important to have the option agreement between Hackney Walk and the council published in full? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Pembroke. And the final question from Councillor Benny Lubbock.
Yeah, thank you very much. Really appreciate the committed work you've been doing on this. I understand that there's been freedom of information requests to the council. What were they and what were the outcomes of those?
So thank you all.
Sorry. Thank you, Councillor Benny Laberk. Would you like to answer the questions that have been asked? Pardon? And could you please just stand behind the...
Sorry,
Thank you very
okay.
much.
So the freedom of information requests are essentially the things that we're asking for now. We think that there is no longer a commercial sensitivity argument because the deal has fallen through. Public interest is incredibly important and overweighs all of that now. So it is for the payments that went through between Hackney Walk and the council. It is for the correspondence between Hackney Walk and the council around the development, around the pre-application process. It is for any checks that were done on Hackney Walk. Those three, one of them is being investigated by the ICO now. As a campaign, we don't have the capacity to push all three to the ICO. But thank you for the question. I would like to also thank all the councillors who've engaged with us. Come to our meetings, come outside leafleting. We have given copies of the two most recent leaflets to someone here in the council to distribute to us because we weren't allowed to bring them to the meeting. We're happy to answer any questions. I would just note that it's unfortunate that Anna and the other two councillors for Homerton have not engaged with us as a campaign. We would welcome that engagement. We have contacted them regularly and encouraged them to do that. Guy Nicholson has engaged with us in a limited way in his capacity.
Sorry, that is not answering the question.
Yeah, so in that sense, I haven't had a chance to talk to the councillors, to my point, in response to Anna's question. I don't know what they think is for the best for people locally, so I can't address that. Maybe I think something different and we as a campaign think something is different. But if they engage with us, we can have that conversation. I think that's very important. Her second question was, do we think that this is a fresh start? I think we think it's a conditional fresh start, the falling through of the option agreement. And it's conditional on what we're saying. It's conditional on openness, transparency, accountability. Without those things, we do not think this is an opportunity for a fresh start. We think it's an opportunity to screw things up again, which is what we think the option agreement was. So it's very, very important that this deputation is taken seriously and the council come clean about exactly what went wrong so that we can have public scrutiny, so we can rebuild trust. Because obviously something went wrong. We just don't know what. So please be honest with the people of Hackney. Be honest with us. I don't know whether I've missed a question. Oh, that's answers Fliss's question as well, doesn't it? Thank you, Fliss. It says why we need, even though the deal is out, is done, even though Hackney Walk have gone, we still need that transparency. It's even more important than ever because we're back to square one on this site. The council's bought the site and we don't have plans for it. So it's going back to that point that we were at 5.5 years ago. So this is where we talk about it openly and where you involve the public, when you involve us, where you involve everyone who's a stakeholder. I don't know about 300,000.
Thank you. The allocated time is up. Thank you very much. Thank you. I'll now invite Mayor Glanville to respond. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Madam Speaker, and thanks to Councillor Joseph, Adam, Heather, Pat, UCL and the MOPS campaign for coming this evening. Madam Speaker, I want to reiterate our commitments to local people in Morning Lane Tesco site. As I've said before in this chamber, in public reports and in meetings with the MOPS leadership. And I'd just like to sort of caveat, I've been at almost every public meeting that you've organised, apart from the one where Deputy Mayor Nicholson deputised. And I think we went into far more detail there than it's possible to do in a set piece debate here in the chamber. Any plans for the redevelopment of Tesco Morning Lane will always put the needs of the community first. Now that the option has expired, we have the opportunity to start afresh on developing a community-first approach. But I dispute the core argument of the deputation. It was not poorly constructed, nor did it lack transparency. And indeed, while it failed, it always sought to manage risk and protect the interests of the council and the community. I think I said at the last meeting as well, we wouldn't be having this debate at all if it wasn't for the foresight and actions of this administration in buying this site and returning it to public ownership. But it's really clear what was right then isn't right now. That means a competitive procurement process, Madam Speaker, to appoint an experienced developer for the site, one that the council and the community can work together with in an open and productive way. And we've already looked at the options agreement and there's no plan to sell the site. options appraisal, no plan to sell the site. Together, I believe we can develop a collective and exciting vision for the site and deliver on the fantastic opportunity at the heart of our town centre and rebuild the trust that we talk about. Working together means delivering on the priorities of the community, which was our ambition when we first bought the site, and manage the risk to the council. But that also means accepting some of the commercial sensitivities, including the fact that publicly publishing the previous options agreement would undermine the council's negotiating position with any future developer. At the same time, the council remains bound by the confidentiality wording in the agreement for a further 7 years. This is normal and accepted practice for legal agreements such as these to protect both parties, which in this case includes the council from protecting us from legal risk. Therefore, at this time, the council cannot release the options agreement without the risk of a legal action being taken against us, and doing so would result in legal battles at the expense of the council taxpayer. This includes pre-application correspondence, which is always confidential and exempt from FOI legislation. I want to be clear, though, we took extensive due diligence checks both on Hackney Walk and Dukeminster to comply with our legal and financial obligations. We have also always been clear on our ambitions, which were set out in the public and open and transparent Cabinet report in 2017 in January. New jobs, new workspaces, public spaces, new genuinely affordable homes, and the 20% affordable housing level set out in the options agreement was never a target, but the minimum level of affordable housing required to be met by any development scheme. This minimal level set because at the time this was at the level where the previous Tory Mayor of London had set his floor in the London plan. Sadiq had not been elected and he'd been elected, but he'd not been able to approve that position. Obviously, we now have the Mayor of London's 35% and 50% targets, and across both the 50% target in our planning policy. When I spoke in the chamber to Councillor Garbutt's question, our last full council in July, I spoke about our experience as a developer of council homes and how much they cost to build. It wasn't in the direct context of this site, and we have to recognise there is the sunken land value worth £60 million. But on average, as Councillor Steinberger heard me say at the public meeting, it costs between £350,000 and £400,000 for the council to build a new council home. So, Madam Speaker, if we're talking about 450 homes on this site, if we went to the full 100% council rent, which I know some aspire to, that would be a cost of 180 million to the council. If we're aiming for 50%, it would be 90 million pounds. And that has to be the baseline for any modelling about a future options agreement that includes council social rented housing. There is no current scheme, though, proposed for 55 Morning Lane, so there is no viability studies to provide, as these will be based on a detailed new plan for the site developed in-house with our teams, but also with a development partner in due course. All these plans would need to comply with the council's current planning policy as set out in LP 33, and this administration introduced last term, developing collaboratively with local people. I'll finish, Madam Speaker, because I fear that I might be running out of time. With 5 very, very clear commitments. 1, we will prioritise the delivery of genuinely affordable housing, pursuing every option to fund this on the site. The council is 2, clear that there needs to be a supermarket on the site and will work with partners to deliver this, including looking at the size of that supermarket and whether Tesco is willing to increase the size. 3, we will use 55 Morning Lane to benefit Hackney Central and the borough as a whole via the delivery of not just housing, but workspaces, new uses for the town centre, opportunity for business and more jobs and higher quality green spaces. 4, we will use the views of the community to shape how the site is developed. And 5, and finally, in the spirit of your deputation and picking up Adam's key point, we will be open, honest and transparent, including about how we balance the different needs, requirements and constraints of the site to the community and the council. I know how much time and energy and thought local people, especially Morning Lane People's Space, have put into gaining interest in gathering views in the community, and I'll make sure that you're a partner with us as we take the next steps. Thank you.
Fine. Thank you, Mayor Glanville, and I want to thank your Deputation Leader, Heather Mendick, and those accompanying her for coming today and representing Deputation. We're now moving on to agenda item 6. Questions from members of the public. I would like to welcome members of the public who are here to ask questions. The time allocated to this part of the agenda is 30 minutes, and I will be strictly adhering to this. So I'll be grateful if everyone can be mindful of this. Question 1 is from Debbie Agnew, to the Mayoral Advisor for Housing Needs and Homelessness. Debbie is unable to be here this evening and has requested that a response be provided in her absence. It should also be noted that the relevant Cabinet Member, Deputy Mayor Bramble, Cabinet Member for Education, Young People and Children's Social Care, will respond to this question. Deputy Mayor Bramble, you have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In her absence, I would like to thank Debbie for raising this important question. Hackney has a long history of advocating people from migrants backgrounds and challenges to come, and we will welcome them in Hackney. Hackney has a dedicated team, Madam Speaker, to support children and young people and their families, whether they are parents or single parents, and who have no recourse to public funds. These are families that are often struggling to meet their children's needs because of the process or their status. The team, that is a no recourse to public funds, and our private fostering team also support those families that are living in private fostering arrangements. The teams work with every single family as quickly and as swiftly as we can to ensure what we hope and sometimes always want to ensure is a seamless process in terms of acquiring status. And as part of that, what the team has done is commissioned a contract with Lewisham Refugee and Migrant Network. And then in our experience, what we found is that through that facilitation, it helps them to acquire the status with that seamless, smoothest transition, as smooth as possible, Madam Speaker. On average, we support each family for just under a year, and sometimes it could be longer, but that depends on the complexity of each individual case. And it varies from every 6 months, the amount of families that we will be supporting at any given time. I think in the last couple of months, there's been 6 new families that the team are at the moment supporting, and that have been referred to the team. All the families that are supported are from a range of diverse backgrounds, whether it's Nigeria, Gambia, we've got Vietnamese. You can't see me help but smile, because when I talk about diversity, it's the heart of Hackney. Families from Europe as well, and all of those families are being supported by our team. At the moment, many of those families are single parent families, but we support them in the same way, making sure they have that wraparound support if they are an individual trying to raise their family. And what family are supported with could vary, Madam Speaker, whether it's their status, it could be remain to leave but no recourse to public funds, which is really frustrated. So the government says, well, you can stay here, but you're absolutely entitled to nothing while you settle here. It's that kind of frustration. It could be that they're currently not registered with the Home Office, for example, Madam Speaker, and these are all the things that our team will seek to support them with. Over the last 5 years, the number of families that have required accommodation and support through the no recourse to public funds or private fostering team has decreased, Madam Speaker, and that goes back to the point that I made earlier, that in terms of what we've commissioned and the work of our fantastic Hackney staff, that actually they haven't had that need, because the work that they've done with the families has worked so well that that seamless transition has taken place. I see your approach, Madam Speaker. I shall be swift. So it might be good to highlight as well that our adult teams are doing similar work if an adult comes into need in terms of status. I think that's important. I know we're talking about children, but you know, in Hackney we welcome all. So yeah, just what we do, Madam Speaker, as well, if there's ever a time that we have to support a family living outside the borough, we make sure that we help them register with, for example, GP, and where possible, if it's feasible and works for the child and the adult, for example, we'll ensure that if they still come and travel back into a Hackney school, we look at all of that feasibility. But thank Debbie again in her absence. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. The second question is from Helen Lewis, the Cabinet Member for Environment and Transport. Helen Lewis is not present this evening and has requested that the question be responded to in her absence. The question will be taken as set out. Councillor Coburn, please would you reply? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker. Apologies for my voice in advance as I've got a slight cough. The Council, thank you to Ms Lewis for this question. It's really important, and I think it's an opportunity for us to remind everyone in this chamber about how the Council deals with graffiti. Of course, we don't want to see graffiti on our shop shutters and litter around Hackney, and we're absolutely committed to reducing and removing undesirable graffiti and we consider any graffiti that appear on buildings and other structures without the owner's consent as an interference with the property owner's rights. Our graffiti removal service works on the basis that we respond to reported graffiti issues from internal colleagues and from members of the public. And of course, they could do this via email, via phone, and of course, through the Fix My Street app. This service also carries out proactively to identify graffiti and carries out the removal work where possible. Where graffiti is deemed to be offensive, removal will take place within 24 hours. And of course, we depend on our various different partners to sort of inform us of such situations. Graffiti removal can also be a complex issue to manage, in particular in ensuring that the graffiti can be removed safely with no damage to surrounding property or infrastructure. Therefore, reported locations of graffiti have visual and safe systems of work inspections carried out prior to removal work commencing. We do not have specialist equipment, and in some cases, property owners will need to seek professional services for removal. In cases where we can remove the graffiti quickly and easily, i.e. if it's painted out, we will undertake removal with the property's owner's permission for free of charge. For more complex jobs where we have to just use jet washers, there is a charge for businesses, and removal is subject to the property owner's permission by way of a disclaimer being signed. Without this, we will not be able to remove the graffiti. Further, depending on the shutter type, these cannot always be easily jet washed, causing flood into the shops and basement area. It should also be noted that some businesses may not take us up on our offer of graffiti removal, as this has been the case in the past. With regards to graffiti on the shop shutters in Narrowway, the graffiti team has already attended the site, and unfortunately the shutters on the businesses wouldn't withstand without our graffiti removal jet washers without incurring charges. The businesses would need to respray their shutters to remove the graffiti. Under the Antisocial Behaviour Act 2003, the council does have the power to request the owner for the graffiti to be removed. The council therefore reserves the right to take formal action against the owner to secure the removal, and if the owner does nothing, then the council can remove the graffiti and recover the costs from the owner. Thank you again to Ms. Lewis for her question.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Now moving on to question number 3. Yep. So we're going to move on to question, which is from Catherine Cannington, Cabinet Member for Environment and Transport. I understand that Louisa Hillward is here this evening on behalf of Catherine. Louisa, if you could please come forward and ask a question. Thank you.
It's on? Thank you so much. Okay, thank you. Given the climate emergency and Hackney Borough Council's stated aim to reduce their emissions, will the council consider committing to serving fully plant-based food at any future catered meetings and events as other councils have done?
Thank you, Louisa. Just went out. Yeah. Councillor Coburn, will you respond to this? Yeah. It's question number 9.
Given the climate emergency and Hackney Borough Council's stated aim to reduce their emissions, will the council consider committing to serving fully plant-based food at any future catered meetings and events as other councils have done?
Thank you, Louisa.
Yeah, thank you, Catherine, and apologies for that. I just wanted to clarify the question, really important question, and we're going to be talking about the climate action plan a bit later. In one of our responses yesterday, Cabinet actually approved the new draft climate action plan to go out for public consultation. So the council will be looking at reducing emissions from food, of course, as you rightly and from our sustainable diets to residents, and encouraging more climate-friendly menus to schools and care services. The council will shortly be consulting on the CAP, as I've mentioned, and of course what we'll be looking to do from yourselves and other residents from Hackney and other stakeholders is obviously be feeding into that to make sure that, of course, we can reduce our emissions from our food consumption, because as you rightly know, ultimately, if we are going to reach net zero by 2030, and if we are going to really tackle the climate crisis, one of the things that's going to be really important is that we're all going to have to think about, you know, the way we travel, the way we dress, the way we eat, and all these sorts of things. So Hackney is also leading on food emissions. One of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're currently leading a working group with London councils around what we're going to be doing around consumption based. And so hopefully more plans will be coming out that, as you would see on the climate action plan. But thank you very much for the question, and hopefully we can work together on this going forward.
Sorry, Louisa, do you have a supplementary question to Councillor Colburn? It's okay, you don't have to. But if you have one,
Yeah. So you mentioned the plans that are in discussion and coming about. How soon are these kind of plans coming to place? When can we see or expect to see this be committed to?
thank you.
So
Louisa.
that's a great question. So I guess it gave me the opportunity to talk about the climate action plan a little bit. So what the council has been doing since 2019, since we declared the climate emergency, is obviously we've been, you know, very at the forefront of tackling the climate crisis. So recently we won the award for being the best council in response to climate change. What we want to do, which is really important, is essentially to bring together a strategic framework across the council. So from everything from low carbon development to what we're doing around transport to food emissions, to all those sort of different areas that the council can directly control, and essentially is develop the Hackney Climate Action Plan. It's not just the stuff that the council can do. So essentially what it will do is set out what the council will do, and we're directly responsible for 5% of emissions and indirectly about 23% of emissions. But the rest of the emissions are obviously down to people. And what's going to happen is that as part of this draft climate action plan, there'll be a detailed 3-year implementation plan. So across all those different areas, and it will list literally every single action that the council will be taking moving forward in order to help us reach net zero by 2030. What we're asking for from residents is to respond back to that consultation, let us know what they think about the actions that we're proposing, let us know what their suggestions are, if there's anything more that we can do. And so my ask to you and to everyone else in this chamber is make sure that when we do go out for that public consultation for a 10-week period, is really encourage you, one, to obviously personally respond back to that consultation, but also encourage other people in the community to respond to the consultation, so that we can make sure that when we do finally adopt the climate action plan, this will be the most ambitious climate action plan in the country and not just in London. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Colburn, and thank you, Louisa, for attending this evening. I just want to apologise to members and Councillor Colburn for the confusion. I was just taking questions out of order because a number of questioners are not here present. Thank you. We're moving back to question number 3 from Larry Keegan, the Cabinet Member for Housing Services and Resident Participation. Larry Keegan is unable to attend this evening and would like a response to be given in his absence. The question will be taken as set out. Councillor Mackenzie, will you please respond? You have up to and not exceeded 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Mr. Keegan, for raising this question on bringing community flats back into residential use. I can confirm the council has 10 flats, one bedroom studio flat, which have been designated for community use. As a way of background, historically, most have been managed by tenants and residents associations and have been used for meetings, office administration, and ad hoc social events. These arrangements have been in place for many years and are agreed at a time when there was significantly less demand for social housing in the borough. In 2019, a review of community halls in housing services identified the potential to revert these flats back to housing use and create much needed homes for residents on the housing waiting list. Unfortunately, Madam Speaker, the onset of the COVID pandemic meant that these plans, our plans to address these had to be put on hold. In part, many of the TRAs who managed these ceased to meet, and it was not possible to engage them in a meaningful way. The small size of these flats also meant that we could not maintain social distancing in these spaces and use them safely. So most were closed throughout the pandemic period. Since the pandemic has passed, we have undertaken further work to address this matter, and patterns of use have also changed. with over half of those flats no longer used by TRAs. However, primarily because of the length of time the flats have been designated for community use, planning permission is now required to return them back to residential use. For those flats which are no longer in use, we are actively working on planning application to secure the change of use, and these are on track to be submitted by December. If planning consent is given and Cabinet agrees to these changes, which I fully anticipate, these flats will be allocated through the Council's letting policy early next year. Where flats remain in the use of TRAs, we'll be working closely with them to identify alternative suitable meeting places so they can continue to champion residents' interest on their estates. To address your concerns, Mr. Keegan, this will be discussed with Warburton and Darcy TRA, who are currently making use of the community flat and Warburton House, as they are currently having meetings and carrying out other activities. In conclusion, Madam Speaker, I can confirm a full report on community flats will be presented to Cabinet for decision in January. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Mackenzie. I'm now moving on to question 4 from Fawzia Balm to the Cabinet Member for Housing Services and Resident Participation. Fawzia Balm mentioned she'll be joining us remotely this evening. I just want to confirm if Fawzia Balm has joined us remotely. Okay. Fawzia Balm hasn't joined us remotely this evening. She will receive a written response from Deputy Mayor Bramville for her question. Thank you. I'm now moving on to question 5 from Zainab Aswat to the Cabinet Member for Families, Parks and Leisure. Zainab Aswat also mentioned she'll be joining us this evening. I just want to confirm. No. Zainab Aswat has not joined us this evening. Councillor Fajal Thomas, Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Regulatory Services, will provide a written response to Zainab Aswat. Thank you. We're now moving on to question 6 from Oscar Heron to the Mayor. I understand that Oscar Heron is joining us remotely. Is he present? Oscar Heron is not present. Yes. Sorry.
Madam Speaker, certainly online, people are saying they never received the link to join remotely to ask their questions.
Okay.
So I'm really concerned that we're going through all of these resident questions and that people aren't able to take part.
The officers mentioned the link was sent to everyone who was meant to be asking questions. Yeah. Would you like the response to be given?
I'm just pointing out that actively that debate is taking place on Twitter now with people that submitted questions and say they didn't receive the link. And we've now gone through a cascade of people that submitted questions. So I'm just saying, you know, I can't not report that to the room, given people did say they were going to join online.
Thank you, Mayor Gavin, for mentioning the officers. Okay, and we can investigate this matter because the link and email was sent to each individual who was meant to join us today. We will definitely look into it and hopefully we can share the emails too. Thank you. Is that possible to recirculate the link or? It's not possible. It's not possible. It's not possible, but we can answer the questions. Sorry, Councillor Coburn.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I was just going to propose that we move in line with the questions so we fully respond to each question.
So we'll move on to responding to all the questions. We have 15 minutes remaining, so I'll start with Deputy Mayor Bramble. Thank you. Yeah, do you have the question? Spare me whilst I get the question, please, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Yeah.
Madam Speaker, it's question 6.4 from Fawzia, and is in respect of house and register lettings policy, which I have an answer to.
Yeah, that's correct.
Can I go ahead, Madam
Yes,
Speaker?
please.
Thank you very much. I'd like to say a big thank you to Fawzia Balm for the question. And the question is actually asking why there's been long-standing tenants who had their name to the housing register for a larger property, and also wanted to know what we've done with regards to the cyber attack that we had 2 years ago, and the council keeps giving conflicting information. Thank you, Mr. Fozian, for the question. I think we're all aware that Hackney is in the middle of an affordable housing crisis, and it is not only Hackney Council, this sits across the borough, in not only within the London, also outside London. And this has been contributed based on robust local property market, combined with cuts in financial support for low-income families. This has directly resulted in rising homelessness, increased overcrowding, and extended social housing waiting list. The number of residents who are on our waiting list is far, far beyond in terms of the demand. So and what we are talking about, the demand far outstrips the supply available. We currently operate a choice-based letting scheme where those accepted on the housing register are able to bid for social housing properties. In 2018, we made a commitment to change our manifesto, and the manifesto commitment was to review the lettings policy to ensure it is fair and it is effective, and also to make sure that those in highest need in the borough are priority. So we designed the allocations policy, and this came into effect in October 2021. We launched it in 2021. We're still going through a transitional period, and by December, we will be able to give a full feedback on where we are, what has happened, what we have achieved by December. The new policy recognizes that overcrowding is a significant issue, and severely overcrowded households should be prioritized. To be considered a severely overcrowded household, you must require 2 more bedrooms or rooms that can be used as bedrooms in their current accommodation. However, with high demand and a limited number of properties available, acceptance on the housing register will not address immediate housing needs that we are currently facing. Applicants accepted as severely overcrowded will be placed in Band B with waiting times of 9 years for 3-bed properties, 13 years for 4-bed properties, and 39 years for 5-bed properties and above. Unfortunately, the Council Housing Register IT system was irreparably damaged by the cyber attack. But I can assure Mr. Fozian that work is in progress to build a new system, and I can sincerely assure him that officers are working very hard to ensure that this is really working. We have made significant progress, and we are working through the outstanding work created by the cyber attack. We are currently updating records for single households and homeless families for whom a housing duty has been accepted. Applicants wishing to join the register should first check they meet the eligibility criteria as the new allocations policy, and if eligible, they should contact customer services on the number that we have provided, which is 0208. For those that are listening, or possibly for those that are online, the number is 0208 356 2929. As soon as we are able, we will request applicants complete a detailed household information form. Council tenants who are overcrowded should also talk to their housing officer to explore other options available to them. In February 2022, we had a program on mutual exchange, and we will continue to provide access with regards to a range of toolkits and advice and guidance for residents about rehousing, which include mutual exchange, Home Swapper, Home Finder UK, and the Fresh Start scheme. All I can do at the moment is to apologize on behalf of the council to residents for the delays in processing application to join the housing register as a result of the criminal actions of the cyber attack. But I can assure Fozian that officers are working tirelessly to resolve the remaining issues while making sure that residents do not miss out. And I'm very happy to, if she's willing to send an email with regards to the issues at hand, I will send this to her. And also if she has other concerns, we'll be willing to discuss that with her as well. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Etty. We now move on to question number 5. As mentioned earlier, Zainab Aswat wasn't present, but I just want to confirm, has Zainab Aswat joined yet or no? Zainab Aswat still isn't present, but I'll still call on Councillor Fajana Thomas, Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Regulatory Services, to respond to the question. You have up to not exceeding 5 minutes. Thank you, Councillor.
Oh, thanks, Madam Speaker. Ms. Zainab Aswat, thanks for your question. In response to your question, I'm sure you are aware that the primacy of crime sits with the police. I contacted Inspector Rob Bradley, the Safer Neighborhood Inspector in Hackney. He informed me that there have been several crimes of theft reported in this area, with about 4 reported in a month, but none reported as assault. I've also spoken to the council's integrated gangs unit lead officer, who assures me that this is not an area of recent gang violence. Inspector Rob Bradley has assured me that the Safer Neighborhood team for the area will ensure that all reported crimes are investigated thoroughly and that the victim will be provided with a full update after the investigation. Inspector Bradley has also directed his officers to increase patrols in this area, particularly as the dark nights draw in. While we are not asking people not to use their mobile phones in public, Inspector Bradley have instructed local officers to communicate with people in the area and at large with residents in Hackney, that when using your mobile phone in public, to be extra vigilant. In addition, our park officers at Springfield Park have been briefed to advise people that are coming to the park or leaving the park. May I please ask you to encourage people you know who might be victim of theft in the area to please report to the police. That will ensure that we have those records and the community safety partnership is made aware of crime in the area. Also, this will assist both the council and the police in allocating resources and patrolling the area in a focused way. Thanks very much for bringing this to my attention.
Thank you very much, Councillor Fajana Thomas. We're just going to go to question number 10, as the questioner is present here today. The question number 10 is from Sophie Cameron, the Cabinet Member for Health, Adult Social Care, Voluntary Sector and Culture. Good evening, Sophie. Please ask your question. Yeah, I think Sophie Cameron may have just briefly left the meeting, but she's back in time. Brilliant. You're mute.
Are you ready for it?
Yep, thank you, Sophie.
Oh,
Please
sorry,
go
I was
ahead.
so startled to be jumped to. I cut myself off. October is Menopause Awareness Month, and it's 6 months since Hackney Council passed a motion calling for better support for those experiencing menopause. Can I ask what actions have since been taken to improve menopause support for women in Hackney and to campaign for better outcomes for women nationally? Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. Councillor Kendi, will you respond to the question? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you, former Councillor Cameron, for that question. You will have heard, Sophie, a round of applause, I hope, in the chamber. That's to underscore how important this issue is and how grateful we are as a council for you for bringing this motion last year. Following the passing of that motion, the council team fed the asks that came from that motion up to national level for consideration in the creation of the National Women's Health Strategy. Therefore, this council very strongly welcomes the publication of the Women's Health Strategy for England in summer of last year. The new strategy accepts that insufficient focus is placed on the menopause at a national level, but although the strategy sets out very encouraging 10-year ambitions, we don't feel at a local city and Hackney level, that's the council and our NHS partners, that the pace at which these will be delivered is adequate. And without the dedicated funding to ensure improvements, the required actions of that women's health strategy are in significant danger of being deprioritised or indeed delayed. Therefore, through the work of the local partnerships with NHS partners and the voluntary sector, we here at Hackney Council will continue to act as an advocate for sustained change to better address the menopause. And we look forward to working with a national government, hopefully sometime soon, that isn't in a state of constant flux. Working with our local partners, we've sought to better understand the experience of women going through the menopause and how we can, in partnership, advocate for and provide better services. A women's reproductive health survey, which I mentioned in this chamber when you brought your motion forward, was held in City and Hackney in April and May 2022. We included questions about perimenopause and menopause. Over 2,500 people completed this survey, providing us with an invaluable insight into what women and those who are born with a womb are experiencing in terms of perimenopause symptoms and the care they receive. Amongst other things, the survey found that the most common symptoms experienced by women who are over 45 with irregular periods were difficulty sleeping, anxiety, and problems with memory and concentration. Out of 332 perimenopausal women, 135, that's 41%, received professional care and support, while 140, that's 42%, did not receive any care or support at all. Of those 135 who sought and received professional support, over half, 53%, were satisfied or very satisfied with their care, but unfortunately 26% were neither satisfied nor dissatisfied, and 30 women, 21%, were dissatisfied or very dissatisfied. That's not good enough. Although the survey demonstrates that some of the women seeking support are receiving good information and support, it clearly shows from those figures, as you can see, much more is needed to secure better and more appropriate support and improve its accessibility. To help address this, support in City and Hackney has been developed. The Community Gynecological Service includes menopause virtual patient engagement events and then smaller menopause virtual group consultations. These are delivered by a women's health consultant. At the moment, that's Dr. Sue Mann from Homerton Healthcare, with input from other healthcare professionals. They've held 4 menopause virtual events for women so far in different areas of Hackney. These have been attended by a total of 626 women and have been an opportunity to learn about the menopause and ask general questions. Women then have the opportunity to go on to smaller virtual group consultations where they receive personalised care and advice in smaller groups. A session has also been held jointly with the Homerton NHS Trust and Metropolitan Police, with 40 women attending that. These sessions have received excellent feedback from women who've appreciated both the easier access to specialist advice and the chance to share experiences and knowledge with each other. More virtual events and virtual group consultations are planned for coming months. We also continue to work to ensure, of course, that all of our employees here at the Council are aware of our menopause policy, and we continue to advocate for greater awareness and support in all local workplaces. But I do look forward to, in the future, with that National Women's Health Strategy, hopefully with a proper, decent Labour government, being able to do a lot more to improve menopause for women. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kennedy. Sophie, do you have a supplementary question? Your supplementary question must arise directly out of the original question or reply and must not be a speech or a statement.
That's good. Okay, well, just to say thank you then, that's more than I could have hoped for in terms of actions arising. So thank you very, very much. And I'm very grateful that the subject's being taken so seriously and there's such continued momentum. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. We have now reached the end of the 30 minutes allocated to public questions. The questions remaining will receive a written response. I would like to thank the members of the public who have submitted questions. We're now moving on to agenda item 7, questions from members of the council. The maximum time allocated for this item is 30 minutes, and I will strictly adhering to this. Can everyone please be mindful of the time? Cabinet members who will be responded, please note you have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes. Please can I ask that you be as focused and as succinct as possible so we can get through as many questions as possible. After 30 minutes, any questions not answered will receive a written response. May I remind members that any supplementary questions must arise directly out of the original question or the reply and must not be a speech or a statement. In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 10.4, questions from members of the council have been alternated between the majority and minority groups in the order in which they were received. Thank you. So question number 1 is from Councillor Binny Lubbock, the Cabinet Member for Environment and Transport. Councillor Binny Lubbock, please ask your question. I understand that Councillor Woodley will be responding to this question.
As set out.
Thank you, Councillor Binny Lubbock. Councillor Woodley, would you please respond? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Thank you, Councillor Binny Lubbock. You'll be well aware by now that we are very proud of the wealth of trees we maintain here in Hackney and that we've been working incredibly hard to increase Hackney's tree canopy, undertaking an ambitious tree planting programme that will bring greater diversity and resilience to our mature tree network, with 5,000 new street trees and more than 12,500 new trees in our parks and green spaces. Our tree officers and contractors have been delivering this planting programme in extremely challenging conditions, working around the restrictions of the pandemic and restoring tree data lost through the criminal cyber attack. The weather this year has evidently been particularly punishing for tree populations across London, with one of the hottest and driest summers on record. Adverse weather takes its toll also on the mental health and well-being of residents, and for a whole host of reasons, we do sometimes see acts of vandalism on trees, as you've pointed out in your question, but thankfully these incidents are few and far between. The council has worked with contractors to undertake extensive watering programmes, both on our streets and in parks, as well as encouraging residents to do the same. It is with a huge thank you to all those volunteers that we can say we have kept tree loss to a minimum. We will replace all trees that have died due to vandalism or disease to ensure continuity in provision. We keep a list of trees that require replacing under contract, as well as other replacements. For the year 21-22, there were 30 street trees that were replaced under contract, and these will have replaced trees that were planted in the previous planting season in 2021 and subsequently failed. This year, there are 55 replacements due for completion. Together, that's less than 2% of the total number of trees planted in this programme. It's a very small number, so I think we should be quite proud of that. We will continue to build upon our tree champion and tree carers networks and plan in future to tag our street trees with QR codes, linking to a mapping project showing Hackney's trees with their locations and names, and we'll see those mature trees that you are concerned about on that mapping process. I'm excited about launching that work. While we will at times have to remove trees, often saplings that have self-seeded, that might cause problems later on, and occasionally more mature trees that are starting to cause problems to neighbouring buildings or garden walls, we can trust in the competence of our tree surveyors to assess and commission this work, and will always liaise with tenants in those properties impacted to agree a plan and a date for removal. Please note that we cannot enter a tenant's garden without permission unless there is a real and present danger. Those occasions are incredibly rare. On the public highway, we only remove trees which are dead, dying or diseased where there is a public safety issue on retention. Any tree which has unfortunately been removed is automatically replaced. So again, there is not a net loss in provision going forwards. Similarly, in parks, we only remove trees which pose public health and safety issues. When a tree poses a safety hazard, we have two options. Either the tree is reduced to a monolith, which means that all main branches are removed so that it is left only as a trunk and left upright to provide a biodiversity benefit as a habitat for as long as this is safe. Or the tree is felled and the remaining trunk or stem is left in place on the ground to provide biodiversity benefits there. On a more general note, the loss of tree will always be properly considered as part of any planning applications, in line with our local plan policies, which seek to protect trees of amenity value and deliver biodiversity gain. It has to be said that Hackney is facing a housing crisis and a climate emergency together. Tackling both of these is front and centre of this administration's agenda. And as councillors, I know we are always working to strike a balance between maintaining and
1
supporting
minute, Councillor
redevelopment.
Woodley.
How long?
1 minute remaining.
Okay. In our wards and in greening our environment. We have pledged to deliver a Green New Deal for Hackney, one that will deliver green jobs while tackling pollution and decarbonising our borough. At the same time, we promise to deliver more decent and affordable homes, especially for the thousands of vulnerable homeless residents waiting for those decent council homes. That's exactly what we've been achieving, adopting a climate action plan to bring forward our net zero targets to 2030, building over 1,000 genuinely affordable homes. And these two agendas are aligned. It's why the next phase of council house building will deliver a net increase in the number of trees on council land and deliver the green infrastructure our borough needs. Keeping the mature trees we already have is a priority. But sometimes to make the best possible use of the land and space, we have to deliver as many council homes as we can, and that won't always be possible. Our residents are facing a housing crisis. Over 3,000 of them are homeless. Failing to provide new housing would be a dereliction of our duty and a failure to meet the pledges that this administration was elected on. These aren't easy decisions, but that's the reality of building homes. But that's why in each case, the council will work alongside the community to design and deliver better communal space, a net increase in the number of trees on sites, and more biodiversity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodley. Councillor Billy Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Just very quickly, residents can be really shocked when they see beloved mature trees disappear, sometimes overnight without having been consulted, even in consultation areas. I'm wondering if Hackney can improve the consultation process and make its tree database publicly accessible so members of the public can monitor progress, as you've talked about, mapping those trees and the reasoning behind the felling decisions.
Councillor Woodley, please. You have 2 minutes to respond.
Yeah, absolutely. As I hinted at, I can't wait to launch the mapping programme that we've done. We also do keep sort of data on all those trees that we've listed as potentially going to cause harm, and we can share those with ward councillors who, in appropriate circumstances, are absolutely welcome to share those kind of concerns with residents. They are few and far between across different wards, and it's usually a case where you can see a wall is about to fall down or a building is going to be impacted. So we won't always kind of publicise that. Sometimes we'll have to act quite swiftly, but we can share that data in advance with ward councillors for sure.
Thank you, Councillor Woodley. We're now moving on to question number 2 from Councillor Suso Orange to the Cabinet Member for Finance, Insourcing and Customer Service. Councillor Suso Orange, please ask your question.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My question, please, as set out. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Suso Orange, please bear in mind next time if you could please stand up. Thank you when addressing. Councillor Chapman, would you please respond? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes.
Thank you, Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Suso Orange, for your important question. Following his U-turn on the 45p tax cut rate on the 3rd of October, Kwasi Kwarteng confirmed that public services face further cuts of up to 18 billion per year. He also stated that he would stick within spending allocations made in 2021, and that this implies that the 18 billion cuts were in real terms, and the Chancellor believed they could be achieved by retaining departmental spending plans announced in 2021 in cash terms, i.e. making no allowance for raging inflation. The Institute of Fiscal Studies soon after warned that an extra 18 billion is needed at each of the next 2 financial years in order to restore the 21 plans, as inflation was then, and as it is now, sitting at around 10% per annum. As I'm sure you're all aware, since then much has changed, including the Chancellor of the Exchequer and subsequently the Prime Minister. And the scope of this question doesn't allow me to get onto Home Secretaries, which I'm sure you'll all be pleased given the time limit on the Council tonight. I see, by the way, that this chaos has been recognised sartorially by Councillor Steinberger over there, which I say that. But I shouldn't make light of the fact this chaos has created a great deal of uncertainty. Great deal of uncertainty. As every policy change has been introduced, organisations such as the IFS have produced revised public expenditure deficit figures. The uncertainty widened further when the new Chancellor announced that the medium-term financial plan would be announced on the 31st of October, which will involve a combination of spending cuts and tax increases. No details were given, including what the impact will be on 23-24. Further, some of the press are suggesting that more painful measures will be targeted to be implemented after the next election. The Conservative chair of the Local Government Association said last week that with local government facing a funding gap of 3.4 billion in 23-24 and 4.5 billion in 24-25, the government needs to come up with a long-term plan to manage this crisis. And so at this stage, we don't really have a firm indication of how Hackney will be affected in 23-24. Things should become clearer when the fiscal plan is announced next week, but we won't know with any certainty what Hackney's funding position will be for 23-24 until the provisional local government finance settlement is announced in December this year. Given this background of an ever-changing fiscal environment and uncertainty concerning the government's plans, it is not possible to determine what will be the impact on people in the borough or on the council. Our fear is that it will be bad and that Conservative government austerity will continue for some years to come. Today, the Mayor, Deputy Mayor Bramble and myself have written to the Chancellor in advance of the expenditure statement, asking for appropriate levels of support for both Hackney Council and, importantly, our residents. And we've urged him to prevent
Councillor
the
Chapman,
further
you
way
have
of
1 minute
austerity.
left. 1 minute left.
Thank you. We've introduced in Hackney a variety of initiatives to help residents through the cost of living crisis, and I'll refer you all to our Help in Hand document there, which is a really, really useful tool for all our residents to see what support is available from the council and elsewhere, and that's available in large numbers of copies and online. So I refer all your residents to that if they need support and help. These are continually being reviewed and reshaped according to changing economic conditions. So the council will respond to government spending cuts in the future proactively and positively through this framework. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Chapman. Councillor Cecil Orange, do you have a supplementary question?
No, just to thank Councillor Chapman and especially about the booklet, which has been really, really helpful. And apologies to you, Madam Speaker. I do have some mobility issues, so I do apologise for not standing up. Thank you.
That's right. Thank you so much, Councillor Cecil Orange. We're moving on to question number 3 from Councillor Garbett to the Cabinet Member for Environment and Transport. Councillor Garbett, please ask your question.
As set out.
Thank you. Councillor Coburn, would you please respond? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to Councillor Garbett for your question. On Monday evening, as I mentioned, Cabinet approved our draft climate action plan, which will now go out to public consultation. This is the Council's first holistic plan to address the climate and ecological crisis, bringing together all the various strands into one overall document, and as such, it is a significant step on our journey to net zero. The climate action plan is based on evidence, having undertaken emissions pathway studies, both for council emissions and borough-wide emissions. The total emissions for treating waste, which includes recycling, food and garden waste, and the residual element that is sent to the energy from waste facility in Edmonton, are included in the consumption emission category as Scope 3 emissions in the climate action plan. It should also be noted that the waste element of the consumption emissions is very small. Whilst emissions from consumptions are the biggest category for the borough, the waste element only accounts for 2% of that overall 74%. The emissions from the energy from waste facility, known as Scope 1 and Scope 2, are included in the National Territorial Accounts by the Department for Business, Energy and Industrial Strategy as industrial or commercial emissions for Enfield, due to the activity taking place within Enfield's boundaries. It should also be noted that the North London Waste Authority are actively investigating the use of carbon capture storage technology for the new energy from waste facility site, and are continually assessing the feasibility and likely timeline for when it's likely to be implemented. Cabinet also agreed on Monday that we'll be rejoining the UK 100 network of councils, committing us to reach net zero emissions by 2030 across specific council functions, namely non-tenanted council buildings and fleet. Our climate action plan sets out goals and objectives across 5 themes: and sets out the ambitious changes that will collectively need to be made by 2030. This will require significant changes in our behaviour, infrastructure, business models and cooperation. By taking an evidence-based approach, these goals are ambitious, borough-wide and aligned with the Paris Agreement, thereby making our climate action plan not only ambitious, but also more robust than many other council plans. Noting that the emissions within the council's direct control, plus those emissions for waste account for approximately 7% of the overall picture to achieve net zero, reaching these goals at a local level doesn't rely on action by a single organisation. Madam Speaker and Councillor Garbutt, the tackling the climate crisis remains a top priority for our administration. Of course, our £50 million Green New Deal pledge will set us in the course to reaching net zero by 2030, and hopefully making sure that we ensure that the future generations doesn't have to be left behind with a catastrophic disaster.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Councillor Garbutt, do you have a supplementary question?
Yeah, thank you for that answer. I'm a bit concerned about the commitment to the fantasy technology that isn't actually proven yet around carbon capture and storage, and just wondered how you justify that aligning to the 2030 target when the real solution is around the sorting and recycling of waste.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. So I think just for your information, obviously, and for information of members of this chamber, in 2016, the North London Waste Authority carried out vigorous research into how and what other alternative methods can be used to sort our waste. And one of the things that obviously came out of that report was that the only alternatives not moving forward with the North London Waste Authority is either that you send it to landfill, which is way worse for the environment, or you send it to another incinerator where, as I'm sure you know, there is no other capacity both in London, or you'll have to send it to elsewhere in the UK, not least taking into account obviously the impact of the transport emissions. Now, in relation to the carbon capture storage technology, that's something that was directly requested by the campaigners and the people who put it forward through deputation. And what North London Waste Authority done was that we responded to those deputations, and we committed that as soon as that technology becomes available, of course, we'll incorporate carbon capture technology to the North London Waste Authority to make sure that obviously we're reducing the emissions on our environment. I think it's just really important to note that this is the cleanest and the greenest form of waste sorting for the 7 London boroughs. And what we have seen over the last 2 to 3 years is that one of the turbines for the existing facility has already not been working. And as a result of that, we've had to send waste to other facilities, which is more expensive to the taxpayer, but also worse for our environment. So I think this is the best course of action to move forward. And I hope that assures members going forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coburn. Question number 4 from Councillor Gordon to Cabinet Member for Families, Park and Leisure. Councillor Gordon, please ask your question.
As set out, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Councillor Woodley, would you please respond? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Gordon. Madam Speaker, it is unacceptable that nearly half of our children in Hackney live in poverty. Once housing costs are taken into account, and that this poverty is for the most part linked to cost of housing, childcare and insecure low wages, you have to look at what's happened over the last 12 years of austerity. People are talking about, perhaps now we're looking at austerity 2.0. It never ended. We're talking about a cost of living crisis. You've got embedded poverty. This is just another layer upon an incredibly difficult situation. This means that many parents and carers in Hackney, week in and week out, are working and still struggling financially. Last week was London Challenge Poverty Week, where members of London's Child Poverty Network sought to raise awareness of the issue across the capital. It seems so clear to all of us engaged in raising our concerns that if national policy was more focused on affordable housing, childcare and better paid jobs, as well as having an adequate benefit system in place, we would not have so many children living in poverty. I'm sorry, I'm furious, it is a disgrace. I'm really concerned about the long-term impacts for those who experience poverty early in life. It is a form of childhood trauma and can lead to poor emotional and physical health later on, which in turn can lead to serious challenges in terms of employment and secure housing. Early intervention is so important. It's very important to us here in Hackney. So far this year, 18,000 of the estimated 32,000 children likely to be in poverty in Hackney have received support, and this work will continue. More support will be available to those identified as vulnerable, with care leavers, families supported on child in need, child protection and family support plans, and in-house foster carers being identified as key groups. What the council can do alone is limited, but we have to make sure that the scarce resources we can deploy are focused on those who need our help most. Even before the current cost of living crisis, we knew that households would be struggling financially, even more than they were a few years ago. Over the last 6 months, we've been developing our offer of support for residents within the council and via community partners, building on the incredible rallying of support that we saw delivered during the pandemic. I know there are councillors in this room. I'm looking at Councillor Root, Councillor Walker, but I know actually many of you have been really hands-on and involved in community support and are looking at how we can get through this coming winter already. And I thank you for that. From April 2022, a greater share of the community grants budget, 1 million out of a 2.5 million budget, has been dedicated to developing advice provision. Many of you joined us on the Hackney Legal Walk, trying to raise money ourselves to help some of these advice services. If any of you get the citizens' advice updates for the number of advice calls that they receive, they've gone up exponentially. You know, we really need to support those services where we can. This includes the Hackney Money Hub going live next Tuesday, our Help at Hand booklet, which was modelled by Councillor Chapman, who's just disappeared, now modelled by Deputy Mayor Bramble. Our upcoming commission into affordable childcare, and you might also want to log on to an online cost of living panel discussion that's going to be taking place from 6:30 on the 9th of November with the Mayor and my Cabinet colleagues who have together been working on a poverty reduction framework across finance, health, policy and early years, which I was very proud to take to some of those events last week. In the hope that it could kind of support other councils facing the same challenges. And obviously working with some of those community partners who are constantly supporting parents, carers and families across the borough. Specific support for children and families includes 2.8 million of government funding via their Household Support Fund, of which half has been earmarked to support families with children. This week, all children on free school meals will be able to access support, with additional resources being provided to those that fall outside of that free school meal network. I'm thinking particularly of the Orthodox Jewish community and others in early years settings. Families contacting or being referred to the council will be supported through our children's centres, youth hubs and community partners.
Remaining.
All other families who are eligible can access Healthy Start and Alexandra Rose vouchers, redeemable for fruit and vegetables from Hackney markets. As this is half term in Hackney, it's worth noting that our youth hubs and adventure playgrounds provide free after school and holiday activities to families, and again stepped up when we needed to do that food delivery. They know their families, know how to reach them and can offer that additional bit of support. So many people have gone above and beyond in Hackney to help our families. It's really worth repeating that. Young Hackneys report to me that over the summer, almost 40% of Hackney children and young people who are eligible for free school meals access the National Holiday and Activities Programme, funded by the Department of Education. My plea would be that we knew that this money was coming, that we knew that we could kind of build on that great work and long into the future, not just wonder if it's going to be repeated term by term and year by year. Alongside this, we are working to become a right to food borough, joining up with other London boroughs and cities across England. Together, we pledge to continue our work locally, and we join in calling on the government to enshrine the right to food in law, grant oversight and enforcement powers to a new independent regulatory body that will hold government to account on that right, provide universal free school meals. Thank you. State how much of minimum or living wages and benefits on which people are expected to live is for food. Fund community meals and school holiday meals for those most in need. Ensure national food security and take the right to food duty into account when setting competition, planning, transport, local government and other policies. We can only hope that this new government will listen. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you. Councillor Gordon, do you have a supplementary question?
I do. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I'd like to thank the Cabinet Member for her comprehensive response. I completely agree that it's an absolute disgrace and very, very distressing that nearly half the children in our community are living in poverty. Does the Cabinet Member agree that despite her optimism about the new government, that what these children really need is a general election, the return of a Labour government?
Councillor Gordon, bring it on.
Question number 5 from Councillor Bin Lubbock to the Deputy Mayor and Cabinet Member for Education, Young People, Children, Social Care. Councillor Bin Lubbock, please ask your question.
As set out.
Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bramble, would you please respond? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you for your question, Councillor. Councillor Woodley has quite eloquently set out the variety of ways that the council is working to support our children and families and the different things that we have considered and actually are doing. And that is important to us, and we continue to do that. We are working with our local schools and our partners to think about the advice that we can offer to support our families tackling food hunger. As Councillor Woodley rightly pointed out, there's work that we're doing in our hubs. I have to say this is in the context, I normally talk about the 60p in every pound, Madam Speaker. This time I'm going to talk about in the context of the Tory government voting against free school meals, which the Labour government says they will not do, Madam Speaker. It's important to say that. And we're working with schools at the moment to look at how, when families have challenges, how that's escalated outside of the normal processes in light of the cost of living crisis. So actually the ways we used to escalate families at risk needs to look different like that, and we're working with school leaders about that. About 3 weeks into school terms, don't quote me, Madam Speaker, but I can't give the exact date. I did write to school leaders working them back to term and the children, and also pointed out the array of things that we're offering around the cost of living crisis. I've also wrote to community groups pointing out that same booklet as well, so that families can be supported and escalated and signposted. And at our briefing with head teachers, Hackney Education was speaking to head teachers at that meeting as well, pointing out the support that we offer for parents and carers and children, but also discussing how they escalate families at risk to the council. In terms of families that have free school meal debt, that's operated at a school level, but what we're doing is working with head teachers to ensure that any family at risk knows the support and knows where to come. At the moment, you're looking at 38% of children in Hackney that are eligible for free school meals. That makes us about 7th highest in the country. I think it's about, you're looking at 22% nationally, 24.6% regionally that eligible. Of our 38%, 20% of our children are yet to do that take up, and we are working with our communities to encourage further take up. What is really important to say is that we were part of the response to the cry from Mark and Rashford, you know, with the holiday hunger. We were one of the councils that decided that actually we were going to support that, came and did supply those free school meals within the holiday. What we're doing now, the Mayor and I, because it's something that we're constantly talking about and going backwards and forwards with Office of the Council, we're starting a wide approach to address poverty. The Mayor and I have started up a task force, and we're just in the process of starting that up. And we will kick that off with a summit, with a food policy summit, getting our school leaders, our community groups. Obviously, we have to hear the voice of children, offering that, and that feasibility, they will look at the feasibility of what delivering free school meals across the borough or any provision would look like. But it's important that we get everybody around the table to look at that, because it's an important work for us. I have to acknowledge the work of the Scrutiny Commission. They are tirelessly challenging me, and rightly so. It's what I did as the Scrutiny Chair, and I expect nothing less from my counterpart who leads the commission very well, and they will ensure that every single thing that we can do as a council, we will absolutely commit and deliver, and they are part side that. And obviously all the people in the community that lobby, campaign and write their concerns, but under no shadow of a doubt, we take children living in poverty very seriously, and we will do everything we can do to support our community in the lack of absence of this government.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Councillor Bin Lubbock, do you have a supplementary question?
Yes, please. We just heard from Councillor Woodley about how terrible the child poverty situation is, and I think we're all, as councillors, really aware of this. And I don't think the Deputy Mayor quite answered my question around how many children and what debt collection methods are used in those situations. I know you said it's at a school level, but obviously there are schools that Hackney Council is responsible for, and I don't think it's morally justifiable for these families to be chased for payment. Free school meals, as we know, aren't reaching all of the children experiencing food poverty. So can the council commit to stopping the use of bailiffs and other debt collection methods where where it's in their remit to do so, and that money can be used to instead of giving it to bailiffs, can be used to help with income maximisation, saving the council money and getting better outcomes for these families?
Thank you. If you know of any individual cases, you can absolutely bring them to me and they will be addressed and then can be looked at. I don't have the current figures in terms of individual schools and individual parents in terms of their payment plan. But if you have an individual case that you know of, we can tackle that, obviously, but it's information that's still being collected.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. We have now reached the end of the 30 minutes allocated to questions from members. The remaining will receive a written response. Thank you. We're now moving on to agenda item 8, the elected mayor's statement. Mayor Glanville, would you like to make your statement to the council? You have up to and not exceeding 10 minutes to address the council, following which the opposition groups will have an opportunity to respond should they wish to do so, and they will have up to 5 minutes each. Thank you. Mayor Glanville.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And I did just want to pay tribute to not only how you received our application to call the meeting this evening, but how all of the governance team and monitoring officer and council support were really committed to get this meeting into the diary and making a success. And I really do thank them for the spirit in which they took that forward. I also had a wonderful time at St Mary's Secret Garden with you, Madam Speaker, Councillor Maxwell, Councillor Woodley and others. I think it's not very often in public and on video that I'm seen dancing with residents, but it was a fantastic event. To change tone, Madam Speaker, I just wanted to start by also thanking our council teams, especially emergency planning, our gold command structure and street scene, as well as the fire brigade for how quickly they responded to the flash flooding at the junction of the A10 and Cazenove Road, as well as other flooding in Border Stamford Hill. I want to also particularly highlight the incredible work of residents, businesses, and our very own Councillor Woodley, who was on the site very quickly with broom in hand, ready to help. We know how frustrating it must be for residents and businesses in this area to be dealt with another case of flash flooding, especially so soon after flooding in the summer. We know it's not good enough, and the morning after we convened a meeting here at the council to talk about the issue of surface water flooding, and the council also met with Transport for London to discuss the frequency of gully cleansing and also their timetable, working with us for a long-term solution to respond to flash floods at this location. It's a complex junction with both council and TfL roads. We also know, and we've talked a lot about climate change this evening already, the importance of climate mitigation and green infrastructure. We're really committed to a programme of that to alleviate and absorb rainwater across the borough. But as local government lead in London for surface water flooding, I'm committed to improving our response and ensuring action from our partners at TfL and Thames Water. Madam Speaker, I wanted to highlight the brilliant series of events that took place during local democracy season. 1 week is not enough for us at the council to talk about local democracy, and it was great to hear from the Hackney Youth Parliament on Monday evening at Cabinet. Having them back here, speaking in this chamber at the heart of civic and political life in Hackney, shows how committed we are to taking them and wider voices of young people seriously. It's also been great seeing local schools touring the town hall. I tribute to Councillor Rathbone, who's not behind me, but I know he takes that programme with you, Madam Speaker, incredibly seriously. And I got the chance to visit Mossbourne Riverside Academy to meet their school council a couple of weeks ago. This was not an easy effort, and I'd like to thank all the officers from across the council who supported this work directly as a response to our manifesto commitment to expand Local Democracy Week, and all the councillors, organisations, schools and young people who took part. I also held our first in-person Mayor's Question Time since the pandemic, chaired by Hackney resident and activist Dr. Ronks. Mayor's Question Time is just one of the steps this administration has taken to improve democratic accountability of the Mayor and Cabinet, as well as increase resident involvement in the Council. And yesterday, Madam Speaker, I attended the second half of the Hackney Youth Parliament takeover of this chamber for their Who Do They Trust event. It was great to see the chamber full of young people representing the Youth Parliament, Hackney Young Futures Commission, Voyage Youth, Rise 365, representatives of the local police, and I'm afraid, Madam Speaker, they even took over your chair for the debate. I'd also like to thank Deputy Mayor Bramble, Councillor Jana Thomas, Councillor Herbert Deloff for their attendance at the event, and I know they found it as powerful as I did. We heard very clearly from young people about the trust they have in public institutions, from the council to myself and the cabinet through to the Metropolitan Police. I'm committed to doing everything I can to rebuild trust using the council's resources and convening power to make Hackney an anti-racist borough. And that's why Councillor Jana Thomas and I wrote to Met Commissioner following the conclusions of the Casey review. We were appalled at the findings, but they perhaps not unsurprised that the Metropolitan Police's internal disciplinary system was found to be racist, misogynistic and sexist. It follows a pattern of reports and reviews into individual instances of misconduct, as well as the wider culture within the police. And this includes the traumatic and racist incident involving Child Hugh in Hackney. We want to work with the police to see real institutional change and transform the Met into an anti-racist and inclusive organisation, the same journey that we're taking the council on. That's why Councillor Jana Thomas and other cabinet members will continue to lead our important work and engage with communities and hold the police to account. Madam Speaker, following the Labour motion in this chamber, I wrote to the Prime Minister in her first week, former Prime Minister in her first week, calling for an emergency budget. I have to say, Madam Speaker, the mini budget wasn't quite what any of us had in mind. Instead of delivering growth, they crashed the markets. Instead of bringing down inflation in September, it hit record levels. Instead of making our country fairer, they cut taxes for the richest. And instead of investing in our public services at this crucial time, when people need support, they've planned a new wave of austerity. The Conservatives crashed the economy, and as before, they want places like Hackney to pay the price. And now we have our third Prime Minister of this year. Rishi Sunak is making history as the first British Asian Prime Minister. It's an important moment for our country and for diverse representation and leadership. I'm sure he has all of our congratulations, and I truly want him to succeed. But that won't stop us from holding him to account. As Chancellor, he dodged tax, broke lockdown rules, and boasted about moving money away from deprived urban areas like Hackney. As PM, Hackney looks set to bear the brunt of more Tory austerity and chaos. These cuts are a result of the Conservative government's own mismanagement. And as Councillor Chapman said, we told the Chancellor today, don't take it out on us. The party opposite, when we met in July, talked about the wealth of diverse talent competing to be leader and Prime Minister. Many of them have been at the heart of dramas and crises in the past week. We've seen a Chancellor who's resigned, environment ministers who are thankfully now gone but didn't believe in environmental protections, a Home Secretary who may have been fired or resigned, we probably still don't know, now rehired, and whose greatest Christmas wish is to start flying refugees to Rwanda. A shameful disgrace. We've seen chief whips resign and unresign in the space of 24 hours, ministers at the dispatch box unclear whether a key piece of government business is a confidence motion or not, and we now have an equalities minister who doesn't believe in fundamental equalities. I see the opposition chief whip and deputy leader ready for Rishi. Unfortunately, we're ready for recession, ready for repossessions, ready for reduced pay, ready for regressive tax and benefits changes, and ready for reductions in services. Perhaps there's room for that on the back of the T-shirt, Madam Speaker, but either way, we will ensure that every single member of this chamber from the Tory party are held to account for the actions of their government and the mistakes that they make. And just to compare that, Madam Speaker, to the hope and optimism of Labour Party's conference, it was a privilege to be in Liverpool, to see a government in waiting and to be there for the leader's speech. A clear plan for a fairer and greener Britain. While the Tories are trashing the economy, Labour is proving itself that government in waiting. As Keir said, not only have the Tories not fixed the roof while the sun was shining, they've blown the bloody doors, roof and walls off the house. Labour councils are showing that we can deliver. We're already delivering Labour's plan for a greener, more prosperous future. And just look at what we've achieved since we last met, Madam Speaker. The climate action plan that Councillor Coburn referenced from Monday evening, an evidence-based approach about how we invest to decarbonise Hackney in a socially just way, creating green growth, new jobs and opportunities, rejoining the UK 100 and setting those net zero targets for 2030. We also sit that alongside a new progressive parking enforcement plan and the amazing sustainability day that many of us attended on Sunday. We've also been investing in SEND, There's no solution to the SEND crisis nationally, and that's why Councillor Woodley and others of us will be marching with mummies on Saturday for early years in SEND. But here in Hackney, we've been investing in our SEND system, expanding places and opening the newly refurbished Pavilion School. We also recently launched that Here to Help offer booklet that Councillor Chapman talked about earlier and held up in the chamber. It's an unprecedented package of support available to our residents. Emergency grants, food vouchers, independent advice services. After Monday night's cabinet, thanks to Councillor Kennedy, extra support for challenged voluntary sector organisations, making sure that we distribute the council tax rebate as quickly as possible. And there'll be more announcements to come as we go into that November summit. We want to work with all of our partners, Madam Speaker, local charities and public bodies to really tackle the cost of living crisis and make sure that we expand our provision. We're investing with the NHS and a new team at the council around income maximisation, which will include promoting school meals and healthy start vouchers to our residents. But as members in this chamber know, the new wave of austerity announced by the reappointed Chancellor will mean difficult decisions. Until we have that general election, and perhaps even after it, we will need to make sure our services are as efficient as possible while still delivering the valuable support I know our residents rely on. That is exactly why what we are trying to achieve with the restructuring of the library service. We need to make our libraries fit for the future. That means modern, well-stocked libraries with great facilities staffed by a workforce that is sustainably structured and better paid. That's why, alongside the changes to the staff structure, we're investing in our libraries. Just this week, we signed off the £4.4 million plan to renovate Stoke Newington Library. We're installing a lift at Stamford Hill Library to make it more accessible. And we're determined, with ward councils in Woodbury Down and the community, to deliver a new library as part of phase 4 of the regeneration project, subject to a business case. Importantly, the new structure of the library service, Madam Speaker, means all our libraries will stay open for the same hours. And we're even piloting longer opening hours at Stamford Hill. It will mean library apprenticeships for the first time, every staff member on a higher grade, and for the first time in years, we'll be investing more money in library stock rather than cutting the budget. And I know there's work on a diversification of that stock to reflect our diverse communities. The consultation is still underway. We're listening, Councillor Kennedy's listening, we're involved with trade unions and their staff representatives. I'll finish, Madam Speaker, with the next few years. We are proudly a cooperative and social enterprise council here. It was with great pleasure that we're now joining a network of like-minded councils and local authorities across the country in the Cooperative Councils Innovation Network to look at how we can collaborate with our communities, with communities across this country to find the big solutions in tough times to the problems that we face. I'm excited, if slightly apprehensive about the future, but whatever we do, we will always work together for a better Hackney. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Mayor Glanville. Does someone from the Conservative group wish to respond? Councillor Steinberger, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. It's interesting, it's somewhat, I mean, normally I respond, so I will now go ahead and respond. We didn't mention, obviously it's now, I think it's 2 months since the Queen passed away, and I'm happy to see that we have the picture here. I was lucky, as well as my colleagues, to be by the funeral, and it was very moving. And wherever you went, you saw like all people from everywhere. So I just wanted to say that obviously we, from our side here, we paid our respect for Her Majesty the Queen. That's the least we could do. I just wanted to move on. Interesting enough, we're talking about prime ministers. Liz has been Prime Minister, I believe, for 45 days. She's probably done more for Hackney than you've done in all your years you've been here. And furthermore, I picked up a little bit on what you were saying. On one hand, you were congratulating, obviously taking it quickly before I would say that we have yet another Rishi, obviously, who's Asian, who's the first time in England we've ever had such a prime minister, which is great. I know Rishi personally, and Rishi calls me the team, which is also great. Now, at the beginning, you were saying you're welcoming Rishi as a prime minister, and then all of a sudden your tone changed. So I'm wondering if you know, what exactly you were talking about there. But never mind, I'm sure you know what you were talking about. I just wanted to follow on the flooding. I wanted to thank Councillor, I forgot your name now, Woodley, for coming down to the flooding. I'm just a little bit concerned because the flooding is not the first time it's happened, and it's appalling when it does happen, what goes on there. Now, it looks like as if like a little bit like Wolf. When nothing is happening, we're just sitting back. I'm looking at the whole structure there, that's over the years with the changing all these roads. I'm just wondering if that's had an effect on this whole system there, because I believe the drainage is not right. And I've seen in quite a few places where the drainage is just doesn't work. When there's rain, the water just doesn't go down. And I'm wondering how much work we've done around that. So come next week, we should have the same issue again. I'm just wondering, you know, it's just a clarification. We had here, over 2 years ago, Tony Burton and his friends came here from Brownlow Road for deputation. To this day, the guy is still chasing me, nothing's ever happened. Now, we sent emails, we sent all types of stuff, but it doesn't seem to be that anything moves on in this whole shenanigan. I really want to see some kind of movement, because people who take the time to come here and do deputations and ask questions really deserve answers. I'm going to touch on 2 points which really is, first, I have to congratulate my colleagues, Councillor Papier and Councillor Levy. We came out of the town hall after having a meeting with officers, and there was a woman being beaten up in broad daylight here, around 6 o'clock, and the staff were pouring out, and nobody cared. The woman was literally being beaten up to pieces. And Councillor Levy and Councillor Papier stopped, and they went over, and they actually were threatened themselves. And they managed to stop the whole situation. And I'm very concerned the fact that when these things happen, you know, everybody just turns a blind eye, everybody seems to run away. And I've got to congratulate you for your, you know, for showing people how it's done. Yet again, from this side, people are courageous and doing things, which is great. I also wanted to, I believe Andy Cunningham is on his last days here. Andy's been an officer for many years, and he's leaving. I don't know, some of you probably don't even know about it. And the same Ed Zitia, many of you have been speakers, and I'm sure you remember she used to always bring in the flowers, and she's done a lot of great work. 2 officers who are part of the furniture, who have done a lot of great work, so I wanted to thank them on behalf of my college. My colleagues. The one thing which I wanted to finish off with is, I am still very concerned, and I think we should do a renaming, branding. We should call ourselves the London Borough of Hacking, not Hackney. Because if you would have a business that for 2 years, it says here 2 years you've been hacked.
1 minute remaining.
2020 in October. And yet, we're still here now, and people are not getting the housing benefits. I had a scenario where in planning, where they used it, in planning nothing, apparently in planning nothing disappeared. But when they needed to use hacking, all of a sudden it did disappear, and there was a hacking. So I'm very concerned with this hacking attitude, how we're using it and when we're using it. And I think it's about time that we obviously stop, you know, and just get on with it and get people out of it. What's further concerning is, how on earth could we have brought in a new housing policy in the middle of all the shenanigan? People for years have just been thrown off the list. People who are entitled, I'm not talking about this new policy, people who are entitled to bid are just not being allowed to bid. So all these figures we're giving, 13 years, 10 years, it's not correct. Because there are people there, the minute you put them on, they'll be able to bid and get the house. So there's something terribly wrong here, why we went and brought this in. So all in all, I'm going to finish off by saying the way we've made this council meeting, I just saw today all this scrambling going on. This is the way we are every month. We never get told nothing. We have to just sit down all of a sudden, get the questions. So I do ask, before we rush with council meetings, we actually make sure that it suits everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Steinberger. Councillor Garbutt, do you wish to respond?
Yes, thank you. Each time we've come together in this chamber since we were elected 6 months ago, it's been with increasingly difficult and alarming times. And we're facing a number of crises, and we think we need compassionate green policies to address them at their root. Residents are crying out for help, and the council is facing an extremely challenging budget context, and we need the Prime Minister to set a budget which responds to these issues. But to reiterate what the Mayor has said, we won't get this from Rishi Sunak, who boasted about taking money away from deprived urban areas, rather than fairly taxing individuals and corporations with the broadest shoulders who have seen increasing wealth and profited during this crisis. We need to continue this lobbying and using the power of the council to call for better. At the Green Party conference recently, that Councillor Binny Lubbock and I attended in Harrogate, we passed a motion to back the Enough is Enough campaign, a mass movement resisting the cost of greed crisis and backing striking workers. We must respond to the needs of residents as their elected representatives, which is why Councillor Binny Lubbock and I are standing in solidarity with Hackney's library staff against the proposed job cuts. Libraries are a vital community resource, and for them to be able to support working people, families, people seeking education, culture and warmth, they need to be adequately staffed. Councillor Binny Lubbock and I support Unison's call for the council to halt their restructure consultation, to allow for the strategy and changes to embed, and then consider what staffing levels are appropriate for a safe service. And the Green Group implore the Mayor and the Cabinet to listen. We need a general election to address the destruction caused by the Tory government, and we want this to be the last under first past the post. The Mayor spoke of the successful local democracy week, and within this context, we are hopeful that our Fair Votes motion will be passed this evening, showing the support from the Council for genuinely representative democratic justice. But we don't just need the PR to stop Tory governments. We need it to get more Green MPs proportionate to the number of people who vote Green. We need more people to speak positively for immigration, stand in solidarity with striking workers, and to treat the climate emergency with urgency. I was overjoyed to finally see the commitment to the 2030 net zero target in Hackney Council's climate action plan, something that the Hackney Green Party have been lobbying for and is in our manifesto. However, as I raised at Cabinet this week, I'm really concerned that the lack of the targets and specific plans to achieve those goals, and there being no commitment to a People's Assembly, which leaves the plans unaccountable to the public and doesn't recognise them as an equal partner with a real sense of ownership of the plans. Which is similar to what we've heard from Morning Lane People's Space this evening, who've done incredible engagement with residents, which was acknowledged this evening, but have not recognised as an equal partner in the development of plans for the site. They were calling for transparency, and it was great to hear the Mayor commit to openness. And I look forward to seeing what that means in practice, because this site is incredibly important. The site matters to people who want access to affordable food. It matters as a potential site for social housing. And it matters because there's a passionate group of residents telling us it matters, and we need to listen. It's not good enough, and it's similar to the saga that's ongoing with the shopping village in Ridley Road. The council needs to listen and respond to the residents and traders who are voicing fears about the conditions that are being offered and that set the traders up to fail. The council said it wants to protect the market and it doesn't plan for gentrification, but the conditions very much lay the ground for this. It has been great to see events happening all across the borough recently to share Black history. I visited Dalston Library today for the Taste of Africa event, and Councillor Binny Lubbock attended the launch of AfroDact, an organisation advocating on issues that disproportionately affect African and Afro-Caribbean communities. We wish them every success and look forward to working with them and other amazing Black-led organisations in the borough to effect change. But recognising and celebrating Black history, achievements and culture is not restricted to this season, and we must be strongly anti-racist in our words, policies and actions to address inequalities experienced by Black and global majority communities.
Thank you, Councillor Garbutt. Mayor Glanville would like to exercise your right to reply. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Steinberger, and thanks, Councillor Garbutt. Very struck by Councillor Steinberger suggesting that in 45 days or 50 days, however long she was in office, that the former Prime Minister did more for Hackney than this administration. I think, tell that to the renters tell that to the mortgage owners, tell that to anyone that was looking at their pensions, never mind those that today were now told by our current Prime Minister that their benefits might not be upgraded to inflation. And the inflation crisis, the economic crisis, the interest rates crisis are all made in the traumas of the Tory party. They're not to do with anything else. There's no other country facing these challenges. And as I said, we will hold your friends, and we've got that quote, your friends, to account and you to account. And I think you should focus less on his friends in the city and more on the vulnerable people here in Hackney and their needs as we go forward. And that is what we will be doing. And I qualified my congratulations because that warmth so many people felt when he talked about being proud of Britain as a child of immigration almost instantly dissipated when the Home Secretary was reappointed. Not only for what she did in office only a few days before, but for the very remarks that she made at Conservative Party conference. And that solidarity with Black and global majority people here and abroad just evaporated before our eyes. So that's why it's a qualified congratulations, but it is still a congratulations, and it's a watershed moment as that glass ceiling is finally broken. On the flooding, I think we share your concerns, and that is why we're committed to finding a solution to that location, working together across the council, but with our partners, because the complexity of solving surface water flooding is really difficult, even in a location like this. You have a TfL road in the A10, you have our roads nearby, and you have a Thames water sewage system. What I think the people of Stoke Newington and Stamford Hill deserve is all of those agencies coming around the table to find a long-term solution and also make sure that our immediate response is good enough when flooding does occur. And I'm under no illusions it may do so in the future. I'd like to pay tribute to Andy Cunningham, who is retiring from the council, to Andrew Monk, who's moving on from our employment service, to Edda, and also to Rupert, who was our amazing tree officer that led that 5,000 tree planting programme. There will no doubt be others that I've not mentioned, Madam Speaker, but if they need to be read into the minutes, they also they get my congratulations. In terms of that incident, it sounds horrific. I'm very sorry that that happened to the woman involved. Thank you for intervening. I do hope you talk to our CCTV team and facilities management and make sure that we follow up that and it's thoroughly investigated. On the cyber attack, I'm always apologetic about the impact on residents, but as I think Councillor Etty said, there was no point in rebuilding a system that already didn't work, populating it with old data, and not taking the opportunity to improve that system and focus it on the most vulnerable, and that is what we did. There were some tough choices in that process, but council officers are absolutely committed to rebuilding those services. And I think if you want to know more about that journey, just talk to them, because they've been painstaking in their work to rebuild those services. And I think the leadership that Rob and Ian and the team have given to that is testament to how we've responded to that criminal attack. Councillor Garbett, welcome your comments about the Prime Minister. I think I made my points around the library staff and the restructure really clear earlier on. I do think you're being alarmist. There's no threat to safety, no threat to services, no threat to provision for the most vulnerable. And we're working with every individual staff member on a one-to-one basis. They've actually redesigned that service. They've redesigned the grades. They're involved in a statutory consultation. It's a really considered consultation. As Councillor Kennedy said on Monday evening, it's not a closed consultation. And I think it would be inappropriate to stop that given the staff commitments on both sides to making that process work. I'm not going to comment on the debate to come, Madam Speaker, because we're going to have it very shortly. I'm very proud of what we're doing on our emissions around 2030. It is even more ambitious, and every time we come back to this chamber, both in our manifestos and in the climate emergency and in the CAP, we've always increased our ambition around climate and investing in getting to net zero, and that is what we do. We will have a clear plan for net zero for our own services, and then we'll work with our borough in a new partnership between business, community and organisations to ensure that we get to net zero. It will be fully accountable. It'll be fully accountable in every democratic structure of the council, and we'll create the new structures as we did around it wasn't the People's Assembly, it was the Climate Assembly last year. We want residents to be an equal partner. Just finishing on Morning Lane, The community will have a real voice in what happens there. I've made it absolutely clear it will be co-produced. It also has to be realistic. And I do have to say that the leaflets are filled with mistruths and attacks. And I think that is not the spirit in which to build that partnership. And again, every time we've intervened to buy private assets and bring them into public ownership in Dalston and Hackney Central, it's been done because we're municipal socialists who want to build that anti-racist borough that has an inclusive economy at its heart. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Ganville. We're now moving to agenda item 9, Licensing Committee Annual Report. Can I invite Councillor Fajana Thomas, Cabinet Member for Community Safety and Regulatory Services, to introduce the report, following which I will invite Councillor Smith, Chair of the Licensing Committee, to address the Chamber. Councillor Fajana Thomas.
Thanks, Madam Speaker. This report aims to inform the full council of the activities undertaken to discharge the council's licensing function during the year 2021-2022 and to show aims and targets for the coming year. I'm proud of the excellent service delivered by our licensing team led by David Tweed, particularly through our world-class Hackney Night to support licensed premises post-pandemic. Hackney Night is a holistic program funded through the Late Night Levy to create a safer nighttime economy in the borough. As a borough, we remain committed to working in partnership with licensees, residents, the police, and other agencies to ensure Hackney remains a pleasant and a safe place for all. The number of licensing subcommittee went up during this period. Hearing exceeded 50 for the first time since 2017-18. My thanks goes to the chair of licensing during this reporting period, former Councillor Emma Pluvier, for her hard work and dedication to the committee. The council licensing lawyer and all members of the license committee for their hard work and commitment. As lead member, I'll continue to work with Councillor Gilbert Smith as the chair of the licensing committee to make sure that all decisions the committee take are appropriate to the circumstances and for the licensing objectives, and also to ensure that the views and concerns of residents are considered. In this current year, our work stream will include the cumulative impact assessment of our special policy area and the statement of licensing policy review. I'm also glad, Madam Speaker, that Hackney MP Meg Healy has committed to working with us as a council in some of the challenging areas of the Licensing Act 2003 that we believe needs legislative changes, such as the temporary event notice, popularly known as TENS. Madam Speaker, thanks for the time. I'll now pass on to Councillor Gilbert. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fajana Thomas. Councillor Smith.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you, Councillor Fajana Thomas, for that. First of all, I would like to thank the Licensing Service for putting together this annual report. I also want to thank the Cabinet Lead for licensing Councillor Fajana Thomas for her continued support whilst I've been settling into my new role as Chair of the Licensing Committee. Madam Speaker, the Licensing Service team is a credit to the Council, and I would like to thank all the officers that work with dedication and professionalism to ensure the borough is safe and welcoming for all people. I also want to pay tribute, Madam Speaker, to all the members of the licensing subcommittees that give up their time to make sure the needs of residents are balanced while supporting businesses to be part of a vibrant and mixed day, evening and nighttime economy. Licensing makes a fundamental difference to how our communities develop, live, work and relax, Madam Speaker. And I believe our licensing service is meeting the challenges and pressures that come with managing a world-class nighttime economy, which is an integral part of what gives Hackney its reputation as a vibrant place to live, work and visit. Madam Speaker, I also want to pay tribute to the work around the Hackney Nights portal and the Late Night Levy, which is nothing short of inspirational. It's a world-beating initiative.
The Hackney Nights portal serves as a hub for information and plays a key role in supporting our nighttime venues. Madam Speaker, I hope you will agree with me that the licensing service is in good shape, and Hackney's world-class mixed inclusive day, evening and nighttime economy is providing welcoming and safe spaces for all people to relax and enjoy themselves, whilst balancing the needs of residents who may live in some of our more active areas. However, Madam Speaker, in these challenging economic times, we will have to be mindful of the pressures our small businesses in the hospitality sector will be facing in the coming months. And I commend this statement to the Chamber. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Do members wish to debate the report? I take that. Is that a no? Okay, that's a no. Can we note the report? Thank you very much. Agenda item 10, motions. There are 2 motions listed on the agenda for consideration this evening. Can I ask all those making speeches and contributing to the debate to be focused and succinct in their comments? In accordance with Council Procedure Rule 16.4 of the Council's Constitution, the total time for consideration of motions shall not exceed 30 minutes. Any motion that has not been debated shall stand referred without discussion to the next ordinary meeting of full council, and they'll be listed in the relevant agenda item in order received. 10A, Motion 1, Long COVID. Members will note from the papers circulated this evening that proposed amendments, this motion has been received. We'll come to those proposed amendments later. Councillor Lynch and Councillor Sizer, please raise your hand to indicate you're proposing and seconding the motion. Thank you. Councillor Sizer, can you confirm whether you wish to speak after Councillor Lynch introducing the motion or reserve your right to speak later? Thank you, Councillor Sizer. Just to clarify, is that you would like to speak after Councillor Lynch? Thank you. Councillor Lynch, please introduce your motion. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Well, where do I start? It's been a bit of a journey to get the motion here today. And I'm proposing this motion for probably quite overt reasons, because I contracted COVID in March 2020, and as we are often called now, we are long haulers and have sustained quite considerable symptoms. And I recognise in the motion that there's some significant updates to this. Unfortunately, we now know that there's probably more people that have sustained long COVID, basically are experiencing long COVID. And I know that there's been some amendments that have been put forward, but I just wanted to just give a little picture to why this is important to me. But it isn't about me; it's about other people, and I'll come to those in the next 5 minutes. So for me, the people that know me, I've always been quite active, quite bouncy, and it was only last week I went to the Homerton for some pulmonary lung function tests, and I did a 6-minute walk. And as I was walking down the corridor behind ED and by the annex, as they call it, I just had my normal, felt a bit short of breath, feel a bit dizzy, and my oxygen saturations go down to 90%. And for those that aren't aware, you should usually be running at about 97, 99%. So I've sort of lived with this for about 2 years. It was the same results that I had last year. And also there's other things that I've experienced other than sort of, the fact that I'm not the Anna that I was, 2.5 years ago, is I've suffered allergies. I'm now allergic to penicillin. Everyone knows I'm a nurse. That's an absolute nightmare if you're allergic to penicillin. It's not. There is alternatives, but it's not great. My teeth are a bit of a mess. I'm actually waiting for a tooth extraction. But again, it's not about me. It's about raising long COVID for those within Hackney and probably within the wider London area that have contracted COVID. I talk about one of my passions, which is my profession, and there's a huge nursing family that have been affected by long COVID. And many of these were people that were sent out quite literally with bin liners and no provision of PPE, that contracted COVID during the course of their work. that many have been left now. There is a community that I would absolutely advocate for people to listen to some of the podcasts led by Dr. Alison Twycross herself, who is set up the long COVID for nursing and midwives. And I said I wasn't going to get upset tonight, but it does upset me because I'm really fortunate that my career and my employer have been incredibly supportive, that I'm able to work flexibly. I'm not patient facing, which I do miss terribly, but there are nurses. If this had happened to me 20 years ago when I was a staff nurse at the Royal London, I probably would be one of those nurses now that is probably having to have very difficult conversations about pay, because unfortunately the government said that they would no longer support full sick pay for people that work within the NHS. The NHS has been more than generous. We know that there's other employers that don't often. People are being faced with redeployment, having to be made leave their jobs. It's incredible. So the main reason for this motion is obviously just for us to raise long COVID, but also just to congratulate the fantastic work and sort of dynamic work that is happening actually within our borough from our NHS healthcare partners. We know that at the very beginning of COVID, the fantastic ACES team were one of the first people to sort of bring about the sort of effects of having COVID and came up with something that I think now is nationally recognised as best practice for those people, predominantly with sort of dealing with things such as pacing, taking your time with breathing exercises. I personally would like to put on record, I've made reference to my respiratory consultant, Prof. Raj, and also Dr. Tino, but also Dr. Stephanie Coughlin and the team at Lower Clapton Surgery who've looked after me. And also those in the chamber who have obviously also supported me as well, and my family. So I think for me, if I was to say this motion, whilst I put what we want to do as a borough, we've also got the all parliamentary, I'll probably get it in my words, this is another thing, I get my words muddled up and I sometimes forget my train of thought, but we've got an all-party parliamentary group that met last week that have heard evidence. So I think for me, the biggest thing that I want people to take away from this is to support the campaign for long COVID to be recognised as a disability. Because if you've got people like me walking around with stats like that, whilst I just want to give a disclaimer, you do recover, it's fine. But there's something about this. And I actually generally think that there was an unwillingness for the government to recognise that as a disability, because it's actually technically, there's a lot of people that have actually suffered harm during the course of their work. And we know that there could be future claims.
One
Madam
minute.
Speaker, I'm aware of my time here. So yeah, I just wanted to end. I probably wouldn't make 5 minutes. I probably need to sit down and take a breath in a moment. But yeah, I just wanted to advocate again for those that have got long COVID, and you have good days and bad days, and it can be quite lonely. And people say, "Oh, but you look really well, Anna," and that may be a sort of the fact that I probably put too much makeup on, but it can be really hard and it's difficult because you think you can do things. And only this weekend I met a really good friend, and I got back and I was like, it wasn't to do with the lunch that we had, but I was like, I've got to lay down for a couple of hours now. And that's I'm still pretty young. That's how can I sustain that going forward? So yeah, I just wanted to propose this, and I hope that we have a cross council support for this motion. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Councillor Lynch. Councillor Sizer, you have 2 minutes to speak in support of the motion.
Madam Speaker, thank you for this opportunity to second the excellent motion brought forward by my colleague, Councillor Lynch. I'm incredibly proud to support such a progressive and wide-reaching motion that far exceeds this government's lacklustre engagement with the issue. Indeed, to quote the recent all-party parliamentary group on COVID, the APPG finds that the UK government COVID policy making has continuously failed to take into account long COVID. They have thus far failed to accurately measure and report the number of people living with long COVID, and the current care pathways are inadequate and do not meet current demand. In contrast, I welcome wholeheartedly the recommendations in this motion. Specifically, the commitment to work with our well-established network of health partners to ensure support as a core part of City and Hackney's long-term strategy, to call for fair and equitable employment policies, and to ensure that all Hackney residents are supported and resourced when facing the holistic challenges of long COVID. Indeed, it is this final point that I want to highlight when seconding the motion. A report by the Institute of Fiscal Studies found the pandemic both revealed and caused deep unfairness in our society, with mortality rates twice as high in the most deprived communities and disproportionately affecting those from a global and Black majority background. The mental health implications of long COVID, along with the physical and social effects, must not be overlooked, and I believe the recommendations proposed by Councillor Lynch will go a long way to safeguarding all of our residents. Madam Speaker, COVID was and indeed still is an holistic national emergency, and we need a clear and bold pathway, such as the one outlined here, to take us all forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Sizer. We have amendments proposed by Councillor Garbett and seconded by Councillor Billy Lubbock, which appear in the papers circulated this evening. Please can you indicate to confirm your formal proposing and seconding of the amendment? Councillor Garbett, do you wish to explain your proposed amendments? You have up to and not exceeding 5 minutes.
Thank you, and thank you to Councillor Lynch and Councillor Sizer for bringing forward this really important motion which highlights the huge impact of COVID, which continues to rip through our population. And thank you for sharing and using your personal experience, Councillor Lynch, to put forward this motion. And I totally echo your thanks to the NHS and other people that you mentioned. I also work in the NHS in a slightly different role, addressing health inequalities, and I see the continued impact of COVID on people's lives, including their own health, the health of their families, the experiences of loss and grief, as well as the economic impact of those things. I'm really happy to support this motion, and the amendments I'm proposing seek to enhance some specific points and speak to the experiences of residents and from my learning from being in the NHS. So part of it recognises the importance of long COVID on people's mental health and well-being, just as Councillor Sizer has just recognised. Although the evidence is emerging, we do know this huge impact from our family and residents experiencing long COVID. And it's also about recognising that parity of esteem and not separating the mental and physical health. Throughout the pandemic, we may have been in the same storm, but as you recognise, we very much were not in the same ship. And people's access to isolation, rest and recovery continues to be unequal through poor pay and conditions which impact people's recovery, as well as their mental health and ability to engage fully in society. And my second amendment recognises this. We've also recognised carers and lots of people finding themselves caring for partners and family members, and the work of carers being a crucial public service that's sadly not given the recognition it deserves. In the section where Hackney resolves to take action, it vitals that we need them supported and recognised by their employers. The recommendation for a review of the Council's employment policy is really important, and my amendment asks for the Council to use its local influence and add to how we work with our organisation and businesses to follow in our footsteps and do the same. A further point, we do not fully know the impact of long COVID on children and young people, so my amendment asks that the Council stays up to date with research and responds accordingly. I also add a recognition of the financial impact of COVID noted at a recent audit committee. And finally, I've suggested this as a topic for Health and Hackney Scrutiny Commission, so that our response is shaped by the experience of residents and staff, and the Commission can hear resident and staff experiences to help develop this policy. This way, this will also ensure that the needs of people with long COVID remain on the agenda and embedded in everything we do.
Thank you, Councillor Garbett. Do members wish to debate the amendments or move directly to a vote on the amendments? Vote directly on the amendments. Can I now put the proposed amendments to the vote? Unless any members have an objection, I intend to deal with all proposed amendments en masse. Members are to vote for, against, or abstain. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? I declare the amendment not carried. Thank you. We will now proceed with the debate on the substantive motion. Do members wish to debate the motion? Or straight to vote? The motion will now be put to the vote. Members are to vote for, against, or abstain. Those in favour? Oh, sorry, Councillor Steinberg mentioned something.
I want to thank the two councillors for bringing this motion to full council. However,
Councillor Steinberger, please clarify what you exactly want to do.
you're going for a vote already?
Yeah,
I
because
asked
we
them-
mentioned earlier if members would like to debate or vote and
I
you didn't
picked up my
answer.
hand.
I'm sorry, the officer, or neither did I see your hand. Apologize. We'll go back to the vote of the motion. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. Thank you. (13B) Motion 2, fair votes. Following publication of the agenda, proposed amendments to the motions were received. I understand from the proposer and seconder of the motion, which I will confirm with them in a moment, that they were prepared to accept 2 of those proposed amendments, and therefore, in the papers circulated this evening, you have the set wording of the motion to be put to the council following that agreement. There were, as I understand it, some further proposed amendments that were not agreed, and we'll come to those later. Councillor Garbett and Councillor Binny Lubbock, please could you raise your hand to indicate you're proposing and seconding the motion as set out on the papers as circulated to members this evening, rather than as appearing as printed agenda papers. Thank you. Councillor Binny Lubbock, can you confirm whether you wish to speak immediately after Councillor Garbett or reserve your right to speak later?
I'll reserve my right to speak later. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Binny Lubbock. Councillor Garbett, please introduce your motion. You have up to 5 minutes.
Thank you, Speaker. I want to start on reflecting where we find ourselves in politics currently, some of which has been mentioned already this evening. People have lost confidence in politics and politicians. Turnouts are low, and people do not think that their vote will make a difference. We know this from the national news, as well as the conversations I'm sure we've all had on doorsteps in Hackney. A lot of what we are witnessing in politics currently, incompetence, corruption, misogyny, Partygate, Prime Minister after Prime Minister only chosen by a select few, all of these issues actually point to a broken political system and a system that isn't serving people. In Europe, only the UK and Belarus, an authoritarian, corrupt dictatorship, use this archaic system. Oh dear, lost my place. Of single first past the post in general elections. Meanwhile, internationally, proportional representation is used to elect parliaments in more than 80 countries. These countries tend to be more equal, fair, freer, and greener. PR is already used to elect parliaments and assemblies in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland, so why not in Westminster? The introduction of PR for local elections in Scotland has led to an increase in turnout to 44.8%, which, although we will all recognise is still low, is far greater than Hackney's turnout, which in May's elections was around 34%, varying by ward, with Hoxton being just 24%. Just 35% of MPs are women, and while this figure is at an all-time high, it shows it's so much far further to go. That's also true of local government level, which most mayors and council leaders are also men. This gender imbalance is not only unfair, but it's also bad for the development of effective public policy, as too many voices, experiences, and perspectives being cut out of decision-making, leaving us all worse off. We are very pleased to see Labour Party delegates support the proportional representation at Labour Party recent conference. However, we're disappointed that Keir Starmer has said that electoral reform is not a priority and refused to make it one of the party's election manifestos, thus endorsing a system that also includes an unelected House of Lords with 26 seats automatically allocated to bishops. Hackney's Labour manifesto speaks with pride of creating a fairer, safer and more sustainable borough. We all share this commitment and strive to ensure that our borough is fair, and this has to include people feeling heard in our electoral system. In March this year, following ministers introducing a proposal into the elections bill, which would abolish supplementary vote system from electing mayors and police crime commissioners, our mayor, Philip Glanville, signed a letter along with mayors across the country calling for the government to abandon the plans to impose first past the post on their elections. And lots of our neighbouring Labour majority boroughs like Islington and Newham have recently passed similar motions, joining a long list of councils including Sheffield, Oxford, North Devon, Hinckley and Bosworth, Gloucestershire, Brighton and Hove, North Somerset and Kingston upon Thames. This motion calls for the support of PR in local Westminster and mayoral elections. PR ensures that all votes have equal value and that seats won match votes cast. MPs and parliaments better reflect the age, gender and protected characteristics of local communities and the nation, and leads to improved government decisions, wider participation and increased levels of ownership of decisions taken. We welcome and included the Hackney Labour amendments regarding the unnecessary and discriminatory introduction of voter ID. We agree this is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist, implemented to further exclude people who are already denied a meaningful say over the laws and structures that govern their lives. We doubt that the government elected under PR would have been able to get away with this draconian legislation and so many of other self-interested decisions. In terms of the further amendments put forward by Labour to this motion, we do not agree that PR allows any further risks of extremist views or unstable coalitions that our current electoral system does. In fact, our winner-takes-all system has allowed for a Secretary of State whose stated greatest dream is to witness asylum seekers on deportation flights to Rwanda. And we have also had 3 prime ministers in 3 months, which doesn't speak to a stable coalition within governing party. We are seeing dangerous levels of distrust and disillusionment with our democratic process, and this is our opportunity to do what we can to correct this. We can't speak about PR without mentioning the great work of individuals and organisations campaigning for it, like Get PR Done, Make Votes Matter, Label for New Democracy and Councils for PR. I really hope this is passed this evening and we can continue collaborating and working together constructively for a fairer and more inclusive democracy.
Yeah, thank you. As mentioned, we also have some further amendments proposed by Deputy Mayor Bramble and seconded by Councillor Ogundemuran, which members can see in the papers circulated this evening. Deputy Mayor Bramble and Councillor Ogundemuran, please can you raise your hands to confirm that you wish to propose and second these amendments? Thank you. Thank you. Deputy Mayor Bramble, do you wish to explain your proposed amendments? You have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think that we can all agree that democracy in this country needs some work. If we look at government, they're playing musical ministers and a game of it's my turn to lead, please. People are becoming very, very disenfranchised with that. Turnout needs to be better. People are losing trust in politicians and the institutions that are there to govern and represent them. And political education needs some improvement, and welcome the work that our Youth Parliament has done in Democracy Week when they launched resources for schools to teach them about how politics work, and I'm so proud of them. But I think the original motion needs to be addressed, Madam Speaker. It makes generalisation and comments that actually doesn't back up with the facts that need to be there. It's missed the legislation that the Tories passed that removed fair voting systems and put in place by the last Labour government. It's failed to recognise the democracy and the imperfect system of promoting one system over the next. And the key thing when we talk about voting, really, what we should be talking about is the point about the new legislation around voter ID, which now will put in place another barrier for our residents. Let's be clear, it doesn't matter what system you have in place, Madam Speaker, if people can't get into the polls to vote. It makes no difference. It makes no difference. It's another way for this government to silence the voices of our residents and our minorities, and it shouldn't happen. Promoting one system over the other, the challenges of that is that you haven't been addressed the pitfalls of one system over another, where, you know, I won't name the country, but one country, Madam Speaker, had, I think, 5 elections within 5 years of government having that system. So it's really important that you consider all systems and do that. This is why we've made the amendments to the motion in the way that we have. We've also talked about our local elections and what we govern. In effect, the only elections that we hold really are the elections for Youth Parliament. Now, the Mayor, myself, Councillor Tebet Dilloff, Councillor for Jana Thomas, we saw the empowerment of young people, not only when they took over this space, they owned it, Madam Speaker, and I'm happy to retire. I don't know about you, Mayor Campbell, because I know that retirement can look like a different life. They are more than able and capable to talk about the mandate of which they want to be elected to, and I don't think it should be upon us to govern what they say is right or wrong. And under consultation, I'm sure they would be happy to tell us what they believe should be the right thing to do. So I'm pleased if colleagues will join me to agree to amend this motion, which changes it from dictating one system without a full election review. We can't give a blanket check to one system, especially when we're not talking about the most important thing, which is our residents being able to elevate their voice. So it's really important that until we have an electoral review of one system over another, that we don't have a blanket check from this chamber. We must ensure that actually at the heart of any decision that we make, and the energy and what we take our energy on and capacity on, is advocating for residents in terms of elevating their voice through their democratic vote, and I think that's the most important thing here this evening. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Do members wish to debate the amendment or move directly to a vote on these amendments? Oh, sorry. Okay. Sorry, Councillor Goodman, you have 1 minute. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Madam Speaker. I am seconding our amendment to this motion. Our amendments are aimed at strengthening and adding value to the overall motion. We appreciate there are differing views across the political spectrum regarding electoral reform within the United Kingdom, but members must ensure that the voices of those marginalised or who face negative outcomes from the decisions we make are not excluded from the debate. I am a visible reflection of how diversity, inclusion, and true representation has become positively reflected in our democratic process. It must be noted that the recent Elections Act 2022 introducing voter ID will disenfranchise people of global majority backgrounds living in the United Kingdom, and how this council lobbied against said act. We must never forget there was a time where the global minority of this world believed they had the right to decide what was best for the global majority of the world. I call on members to also note examples across mainland Europe where versions of proportional representation systems are in operation that rarely have faces like mine in their elected bodies. The lack of diversity among elected members has real-world implications in the delivery of public policy that acts to further marginalize global majority communities. Representation matters, but not at the cost of those who face the worst outcomes in our society. We must proceed after careful analysis careful analysis is conducted on how proportional representation can undermine grounds gained on tackling ethnicity-based discrimination.
Thank you.
Please support the amendment.
Thank you very much, Councillor Goodman. Do members wish to debate the amendment?
Speaker, I thought that was part of the debate. Was that, have we not already started debating? Because that was not the secondary, that was part of the beginning of the debate, no? Because the seconder doesn't get an automatic, so the debate has begun.
Yeah.
And so I would like to speak to the amendments rather than my actual.
Councillor Benny-Lovett, you are correct.
Just to be clear, we really appreciated the input from the Labour Party opposite in creating this motion, and we included a lot of those things, including that a really important part about voter ID. So we were really pleased to have that input. Just to be clear, on the Youth Parliament in Hackney, we have been speaking to representatives of them, and they are keen to look at doing proportional systems, but we are happy also to have included that amendment as well, that we have more discussion with them to see how they feel like they would like to move forward. Just on the particular thing of proportional representation, we're not endorsing any one particular form of proportional representation within this motion. and to have it taken out of the motion does change it quite significantly to be less in favour of proportional representation in principle rather than any particular type. And I agree there are better and worse types, some which have a better link to a locality and some which don't, depending on where you are. But yeah, we think it's really important that that is still part of this motion. Otherwise, it doesn't really speak to the substance of it, and it doesn't really speak to what unions are asking
Thank
for,
you,
what the Labour Party is
Councillor
asking
Benny-Lubbock.
for, and what the public are asking for. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Benny-Lubbock. Is there anyone else who would like to speak on this debate? No? No? Okay. Can I now put the amendments to the vote? As with the earlier motion, unless any members have an objection, I intend to deal with all the proposed amendments en masse. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? I declare the amendments carried. We will now proceed with the debate on the substantive motion, which includes the amendment. Do members wish to debate the motion? Okay. Is yes, right? We received a yes from Councillor Benny-Lubbock.
How long do we have before the motion falls? 2 minutes. I just want to make sure everyone understands that, because I would hate to see it fall.
Councillor
Can I
Benny-Lubbock.
have my 1 minute reserved? Okay, I'll be very, very quick. I think it's really important that we support this, follow what your members are saying, follow what your conference is saying. It's really important that we introduce this to reinstall fairness. Remember, first past the post was introduced when landowning aristocrats dominated Parliament. And I think it's really important that we remember that, and we remember that we have an extremist government in place at the minute. That wouldn't be the case under proportional representation. We would have more dialogue, we would have more collaborative working. You look how it's working in other parts of the country and in other parts of the world, and it's really backward that we're still having this system and we're stuck with it. I think in Hackney, let me just say, of the different parties, it took 25,000 votes to elect an SNP Member of Parliament, 60,000 votes to elect a Labour Member of Parliament, and 866,000 votes to elect a Green Member of Parliament. And if that sounds fair to you, then I think you might be a little bit biased. And I'll just leave it at that so we have time for the vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Benny-Lubbock. Deputy Mayor Bramble.
Proportional representation means different things for different people. Without a whole form electoral review, there'll be lack of clarity.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Bramble. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? No. The motion will now be put to the vote. Members are to vote for, against, or abstain. Those in favour? Those against? Any abstentions? I declare the motion carried. Thank you. We have, yep, Councillor. Yep, as mentioned earlier, yep. Thank you. We have now come to the end of the agenda, and I declare the meeting closed. The Mayor has organised refreshment in the Bridgetown Bar funded by the Majority Group for any members that wish to attend. Thank you very much, everyone.
Please be upstanding for the Speaker of the London Borough of Hackney.